Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. Technique to strip away death power. Alas, however, facing Senju Makoto's warning, Agent Sosok's face showed a distressed and sad expression, and he said in a distressed tone, "I know this kind of thing very well, but one of my subordinates witnessed his beloved friend being devoured by the Hollow during the battle with the Hollow. Since then, he deeply hated his own power of the god of death and had the idea of leaving the team." At this point, Agent Sosok's eyes revealed pity and bitterness, just like an old father who regards his subordinates as relatives. After sighing again, he continued, "I have tried to comfort her many times, but it didn't work at all. The situation has even reached the point where she will wail in pain just by seeing the god of death." Facing Agent Sosok's gaze, Senju Makoto gritted his teeth and made a suggestion. "Then apply to the Central 46th Office and the 1st Division to leave the team. Since you can't bear the responsibilities and obligations of being a Shinigami, I believe the adults in the Central 46th Office and the 1st Division will agree to your application to leave the team." Central 46th Office. On the surface, it is composed of 40 sages and 6 judges gathered from all over Soul Society. It is the highest judicial body in Soul Society. In fact, it is a collective council composed of nobles and elders. It nominally has the right to decide all matters in the entire Soul Society. I know this very well, but she is still so young. She has made such a great sacrifice for the safety of Soul Society and the Seireitei. But once the Central 46th Office agrees to leave the team, her lock will be broken and she will be forced to disperse and deprive herself of the power of a Shinigami. At this point, Agent Sosok looked at Makoto Senju obscurely, wanting to observe how Makoto Senju would react when he heard this unfair and cruel decision made by the top leaders. If it was a normal hot-blooded young genius, even if he ran directly to the Central 46th Office to question it, or even to make trouble, it would not be certain. However, Senju Makoto blinked his seemingly innocent eyes, clapped his hands, and said, "Isn't this a double blessing? This way, you can leave the team smoothly, and you can also avoid missing your loved ones when you see your zanpakutō in the future." Agent Sosok. At this moment, even Agent Sosok was stunned by Senju Makoto's unconventional reaction. This guy, is he really too innocent? Or is there a dark heart hidden under that innocence? Agent Sosok shook his head and continued, "Mr. Makoto, how can it be so simple? You should also know that once the spiritual body's bond is broken, the spiritual power that continues to escape will not only cause her to lose the power of the god of death, but even her lifespan will inevitably be greatly shortened. So when I was listening to the captain's party today, I heard Captain Unohana mention that Mr. Makoto has a completely different perspective on Kido and medical skills from others. I wondered when I could meet Mr. Makoto in person. I hope that Mr. Makoto can develop a technology that can completely separate the power of the god of death from the spiritual body. In this way, many god of death who have given everything for the Soul Society can avoid the pain of having their bond broken when they plan to leave the team." Agent Sosok said in a melancholy tone, looking at Senju Makoto with a sincere and gentle look, and the whole person seemed to be emitting a certain kind of brilliance. It must be said that the charm exuded by Agent Sosok is not small. Although he was just a vice captain, he could have ignored the situation of a mere team member, but Agent Sosok took the initiative to consider her, and was willing to risk being punished by the Central 46th Office to do his best, and even as a vice captain, he took the initiative to make a humble request to a member of the 4th Division. If Senju Makoto had not known very well in his heart that this was definitely not the true face of Agent Sosok, he would probably have completely believed in Agent Sosok's performance, and was completely convinced by the humility, kindness and gentleness of the man in front of him, and was willing to die. Of course, at this moment, Senju Makoto's heart was actually laughing to death, and he didn't believe what Agent Sosok said at all. Even if Senju Makoto believed that one day he could change the situation between him and Unohana teacher where the man was weak and the woman was strong, and completely turn the tables and become the master, he would never believe what Agent Sosok said. That poor 5th Division dev god, it is very likely that it happened, but in Senju Makoto's opinion, it is not clear whether it was played backly by Agent himself. Therefore, in the series of words of Agent Sosok that seemed to have an impeccable cause and effect relationship, and even if they were publicized, many Shinigami would only admire Agent Sosok's gentleness and kindness. 90% of the invalid information was removed. Aizen Sosok intends to strip the power of the Shinigami from the spirit for some purpose. While thinking about the real purpose of Aizen Sosok, Senju Makoto's eyes faintly turned red, and his eyes were faintly crystal clear. He nodded heavily and patted his chest and said, "Vice Captain Aizen, don't worry, I will tell this matter to Unohana teacher truthfully and ask Unohana teacher to develop the technology personally. If there is a result, Unohana teacher will contact the captain of the 5th Division, Hirako Makoto, to ask for credit for you to the Central 46th office." Aizen Sosok. Finally, after Aizen Sosok said goodbye to Senju Makoto with a dry tone, Aizen Sosok just watched the back of Senju Makoto as he entered the office deep in the gynecology department. His eyes slightly narrowed, and there seemed to be a difficult-to-read meaning in his eyes. And Senju Makoto kept almost the same pace back to the office, and when he slowly closed the door, he couldn't help but take a deep breath to relieve his tense nerves. Until the moment before returning to the office, Senju Makoto was really worried that Aizen Sosok would take out Mirror Flower Water Moon and say a few heartfelt words to him. Or maybe he mentioned Unohana Retsu and the captain of the 5th Division, Hirako Mako, at the end, or maybe he concealed the image of a pure boy he pretended to be, or maybe Aizen's arrogance would not think that the information he voluntarily revealed would cause any hidden dangers. In short, Senju Makoto felt that he was very lucky to be able to leave intact after knowing so much information about Aizen Sosok. As his mood gradually calmed down, Senju Makoto first brewed a cup of tea for himself, watching the tea leaves stretching in the boiling water. As his emotions gradually calmed down, he couldn't help but subconsciously think about the real purpose of Aizen Sosok. The technology to strip the power of the god of death. For the god of death, spiritual pressure is undoubtedly the most basic and fundamental existence, so the way the Central 46th chamber strips the power of the god of death is to destroy the lock, allowing the spiritual power to dissipate irreversibly, and the spiritual pressure will naturally continue to decline. Chapter 27. Zanpakutō type. The shape and ability of Zanpakutō are based on the soul of the god of death. This is the most basic definition of Zanpakutō recorded in the textbook of the Mao Academy of Spiritual Arts. It is only after Senju Makoto became a true god of death and gained a deep understanding of the spirit of the god of death through Kido and medical skills that he summarized more rules about Zanpakutō. Regarding the system of Zanpakutō itself, Soul Society shows that it is mainly divided into two categories according to the ability of Zanpakutō: Kitten system and direct attack system. There are three subcategories in Kitten system: Hado system, Fudo system and special creature system. There are two subcategories in direct attack system: direct slash system and flying tool system. Among them, the strange one-eyed big man Tere summoned by Unohana Retsu's Zanpakutō Nanaku Shijuku, N.A. on the surface belongs to the special creature system. As for Senju Makoto's Sinra Wonksayang, although it does not show any aggressiveness now, it was still classified as a special word type in the Hado system when it was in the Mao Academy of Spiritual Arts. The Zanpakutō of the Binding School, such as Aizen Sosok, 13th Division Captain Yukita Jushiro, and Score Young Michika, are more inclined to rules, strong control, and interference. Among the direct attack schools, the direct slashing school, which is completely exclusive to reckless men, is the most straightforward, and the flying props school is similar to the ability of Senbon Sakura and Great Cat to disperse the Zanpakutō into various flying props. However, when Senju Makoto summarized the ability categories of Zanpakutō, combined with the memory of Zanpakutō in his previous life, he suddenly discovered that in addition to the horizontal division of these two categories of Zanpakutō in terms of ability, there seems to be some kind of vertical division, that is, the vertical division between Shikai and Bankai. Strength or mutation. For most Zanpakutō abilities, Shikai and Bankai are related in a strengthened manner. For example, the essence and nature of Raijin Jaka of the 13th Gotti Division Captain Yamamoto's Shikai and Bankai are almost exactly the same, but the intensity has been terribly strengthened. But there are also a small number of Zanpakutō whose Shikai and Bankai seem to be completely unrelated. For example, the future captain of the 2nd Division, Soiloi Fong, whose Zanpakutō Sinoform Shikai clearly belongs to the Kidden system, with the terrifying ability called two-hit kill, but the Sinoform Thunder Whip after Bankai surprisingly crosses the system and becomes a flying prop system in the direct attack system. While Makoto Senju secretly reading a lot of information about Zanpakutō, almost all the texts did not explain the reason for this situation. If the ability of Zanpakutō is constructed by its own soul at birth, then this kind of crooked situation should not occur. This situation seems a little unreasonable. It is even more suspicious that this situation has not been noticed in the thousands of years of history of the Seireitei. The only explanation is that the Seireitei deliberately ignored this part of common sense for some reason, and planned to hide something. Wait, Makatao Senju frowned, and suddenly noticed a small detail in the conversation between himself and Aizen Sosok. When Aizen Sosok asked the question for the first time, the question he asked was, how can we separate the zanpakutō from the spirit? When he asked the question for the second time, it became complete separation, to extract the power of the god of death from the normal spirit. So, Aizen Sosok's judgment is the existence of the real power of the god of death, that is, zanpakutō. However, despite this, it is enough to prove Senju Makatao's judgment on the ability of zanpakutō, confirming that the ability of zanpakutō is not completely fixed at the beginning. It is very likely that in the process of awakening the ability of zanpakutō, the wishes and will of the god of death itself will affect the zanpakutō, thus forming the real power of the god of death. But Senju Makatao's brows became more and more furrowed, and he murmured in a low voice. Information leaked unintentionally? Or did you tell me this conclusion intentionally? Or do you want to use this to guide me to do something, or do you intend to test me? Aizen Sosok. What are you going to do after you completely separate the power of the god of death from the spirit? Senju Makatao thought of this and couldn't help rubbing his temples again, only to feel his head swelling. It was too uncomfortable to be in contact with a man like Aizen Sosok who could easily play with the entire Soul Society. Any little detail hides information that may be overlooked. At this moment, Senju Makatao inexplicably hoped that his brain could be simply filled with muscles like Madarame Ikaku, so that he would have fewer troubles and worries. I'm so jealous, Ikaku. Thinking of this, Senju Makatao looked at the night sky outside the office window and couldn't help but miss his life at the Mouse Spiritual Academy. At the time, everyone was still very simple, and he would also be very relaxed to reduce his IQ and thinking to the same level as Madarame Ikaku, and then he would be happy every day. At this time, Ikaku is probably thinking about who to fight tomorrow. At the same time, in the 11th Division's dormitory, Ikaku Madarama listened to the news brought back by Ayasuke young Michika, and he was stunned and said in disbelief. What did you say? Senju, in the gynecology department. Ayasuke young Michika nodded and said. Well, I was also very surprised when I heard the news. Later, I contacted the members of the 4th Division to confirm it. The news is true, and Senju hasn't treated a single patient in the past 2 months. The corners of Madarame Ikaku's mouth twitched a few times, and then he slapped the table and laughed. Ha 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 ha. For a while, almost half of the 11th Division's dormitory echoed with Ikaku Madarame's exaggerated laughter. And Ayasuke young Michika looked at Ikaku Madarame who was rolling on the ground with laughter in front of him, and couldn't help but be a little speechless, and said. Ikaku, after going through such a plain thing, I'm sure Senju must be feeling very uncomfortable now. It's not appropriate to laugh at him like this, right? Madarame Ikaku blushed, and his mouth twitched as he tried to hold it back, but in the end he failed. Yes, I'm sorry, but ha 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 ha, I really can't help it. Seeing this, Ayasuke young Michika held his forehead helplessly, not knowing what to say at all. However, as Ayasuke young Michika thought about Senju Makatao's delicate features that usually look gentle and indifferent, and that he might have to be surrounded by a group of troublesome women in the future and show a bitter expression, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but smirk. No, how could I be the kind of unscrupulous person who laughs at my friends? Ikaku must have been infected by it. Thinking of this, Ayasuke young Michika kid Madarame Ikaku hard and said. That's enough, let's find a way to help Senju. Okay. Madarame Ikaku finally sat up again, nodded seriously with a serious expression, and said. This time, it seems that I have to personally bring people to the gynecology department to help out. Chapter 28 Two similar people. Ayasuke young Michika heard this and couldn't help but hold his forehead again and said. Be serious, that's the gynecology department. Our entire team, including those who clean and cook, can't even gather 5 women. Who said that we male Shinigami can't go to the gynecology department for treatment? Madarame Ikaku said confidently. Is it not possible to change your sex? Okay, Ayasuke young Michika responded weakly, feeling that he could not refute Madarame Ikaku's logic at all, and even felt that this guy just wanted to see Senju Makatao's joke. But Madarame Ikaku didn't care what Ayasuke young Michika thought, and dragged Ayasuke young Michika towards the training ground not far away, and put on their chief officer armbands. Madarame Ikaku, the 19th seat of the 11th Division. Ayasuke young Michika, the 20th seat of the 11th Division. Different from the appointment standards of chief officers of other divisions, the 11th Division has only one standard set by King Puchi's, and that is fighting. As long as the strength is strong enough, let alone the chief officer, even the position of captain can be given up. Therefore, after Madarame Ikaku and Isuko Yamachika joined the 11th Division, they almost immediately took the 19th and 20th seeds. Assemble. After Madarame Ikaku and Isuko Yamachika arrived at the training ground, they immediately shouted at their subordinates who were still training late at night. Suddenly, nearly 50 strong men with strong auras, many of whom were even naked with large muscles, appeared in front of Madarame Ikaku and Isuko Yamachika. Everyone, listen to me. The 4th Division member Senju Cheng is my Madarame Ikaku's brother, beloved relative. Ahem. Isuko Yamachika coughed softly to remind Madarame Ikaku that the wording was wrong. What beloved? This is very easy to be misunderstood. Madarame Ikaku glanced at Isuko Yamachika, a little confused, then patted his chest and continued. Now, Senju has been assigned to the gynecology department. How can this be possible? So, at this point, Madarame Ikaku's voice rose significantly and said, tomorrow we will all go out to calm down the Senju town and let Senju see the doctor in turn. Do you understand? Yes. Many big men were a little confused, but they agreed to this kind of thing that sounded very loyal. Their sweaty muscles seemed to be filled with a different kind of youth and charm under the night. Looking at Madarame Ikaku and his many subordinates who were gradually getting excited, Isuko Yamachika felt a headache and felt that this kind of thing was a bit unreliable. But maybe this is a good opportunity. Why would Senju like to stay in the gynecology department? Let's make a fuss like this, and then let the captain come forward to transfer Senju from the 4th Division to the 11th Division. Isuko Yamachika's eyes lit up, and he immediately rushed to the courtyard of Zaraku King Puchi in the 11th Division. One night passed. In the 4th Division's office, Makoto Senju, who had left the battle with Senro Onksanging the spiritual space, looked at the dawn in the sky, stood up and stretched his numb body, and hurried back to the courtyard. As Makoto Senju carefully returned to the courtyard, he found Unohana Retsu eating breakfast as elegantly as usual, and there was another breakfast prepared opposite Unohana Retsu. Makoto Senju breathed a sigh of relief, bowed, and sat opposite Unohana Retsu. Unohana Retsu seemed to be no different from usual and asked softly. Makoto, it's a little later than usual. Where did you go last night? Then, Makoto Senju ignored a little bit of psychological activity and told about his chance encounter with Aizen Sosok last night and practicing in the gynecology department for a night. However, Unohana Retsu seemed to be completely unsurprised about this matter. The technique to separate the power of the Shinigami. Vice Captain Aizen actually asked you to do it. Yes, teacher, I'm also confused about this, even though I know nothing. Senju Makoto answered with a somewhat puzzled tone. Although he had expected this and knew that a man like Aizen Sosok would not easily reveal his flaws, but looking at Unohana Retsu's reaction, Senju Makoto suddenly realized that Aizen Sosok should have made perfect preparations long ago, and he was almost conducting research in such a blatant way, but no one doubted his real purpose. It's really terrible. Senju Makoto sighed again in his heart. Unohana Retsu pondered for a moment, looked at Senju Makoto and said, Makoto, Vice Captain Aizen's evaluation is not wrong. You were a talented person, and your talents in Kido and medical skills are quite excellent, so you don't have to belittle yourself. On the contrary, what you lack most now is confidence, understand? Yes, teacher. Senju Makoto answered readily. Unohana Retsu continued. So, I have specially promoted your reputation for you, and it is also for your convenience to contact patients in the future. I believe that from today on, there should be patients who will try to find you for treatment one after another, and you can also truly verify your ability, understand? Senju Makoto was slightly startled, looked up at the gentle eyes of Unohana Retsu, and inexplicably felt his chest warm. It turns out, the teacher bragging at the captain-level gathering was not really for face, but a preparation for this moment. Yes, teacher. Senju Makoto nodded heavily. And finally, Unohana Retsu hesitated for a moment and spoke. By the way, Makoto, if possible, try to keep a certain distance from Vice Captain Aizen. Senju Makoto heard this, his heart jumped, and he looked at Unohana Retsu with a bit of doubt in his eyes, and tried to test it. Why? Teacher, Vice Captain Aizen seems to have a very good character. Well, Vice Captain Aizen's character is indeed very good, gentle and reliable, considerate of his subordinates, practical and decisive, and his own strength and ability are quite outstanding. Unohana first affirmed Aizen Sasuke, then changed the subject and said, however, he sometimes gives me a sense of danger, and I can't see through him, so you'd better keep a certain distance from him, Makao. Yes, I understand. Senju Makao said seriously. Teacher, this is the only thing I will definitely strictly implement. Please rest assured. Senju Makao couldn't help but complain about himself. However, at this moment, Unohana looked at Senju Makao with a flash of doubt, and his curved eyes opened a little, muttering. Suddenly I found that Makao gave me a similar feeling to Vice Captain Aizen. In addition to not having the danger that flashed in my intuition, I also feel that sometimes I can't see through Makao, and Makao is also so gentle. Senju Makao. At this moment, Senju Makao couldn't help but feel a little panicked. Chapter 29 Captain's Meeting. Unohana teacher, do you want to listen to what you are saying? How can I be similar to Aizen Sasuke? I'm a good person. Makao Senju's the first to send himself a dozen good person cards, with a pure good person smile on his face, and said a little embarrassedly. Teacher, how can I compare to Vice Captain Aizen? Even if you want me to build up my self-confidence, this is too exaggerated. Unohana beautiful eyes stared at Makao Senju, and said with certainty of his judgment. No, there are indeed some similarities, but there is a very obvious difference between you and Vice Captain Aizen. Makao Senju asked unexpectedly. What is it? Unohana said with his lips slightly opened. Loneliness, sometimes loneliness that seems incompatible with the world. Makao Senju was a little stunned. Loneliness. Makao Senju, whose heart was poked in some places, almost forced his smile, and a strong sense of loneliness suddenly emanated. A flash of pity flashed in Unohana eyes, but he did not continue to ask questions. Instead, he stood up and left the courtyard to participate in the monthly captain meeting. For individuals, loneliness is the most inescapable curse. Arriving in the world alone, and eventually leaving the world alone, between these two lonelinesses, everyone is a lonely soul wandering in confusion. Especially for the long-lived deaf god, that loneliness will be stretched countless times by time, and a lot of differences or similarities are needed to fill or soothe that loneliness. Once, Unohana choice to fight against that loneliness was killing, feeling the true self in the endless killing, and completely obsessed with that killing to replace loneliness. Now, in Unohana opinion, Senju Makao has not really found his own way to integrate into this world and soothe loneliness, although Senju Makao's loneliness sometimes seems a little too strong. As a teacher's gentleness, Unohana did not disturb Senju Makao. After Unohana left for a while, Senju Makao breathed a sigh of relief and slowly readjusted his state. Loneliness. I didn't expect that Unohana's observation skills were so meticulous, or did I reveal it unintentionally? Senju Makao thought silently, unconsciously pursing his lips. However, Senju Makao also understood where his loneliness came from, that is, there was no one like him, the loneliness of the same kind in the true sense. The memories retained from the previous life made Senju Makao understand that he was an alien in this world in a sense. However, in fact, Senju Makao didn't care too much about this kind of thing. Time would smooth everything out. Senju Makao's sentimentality was not his character. On the contrary, Senju Makao's mouth curled up, and he looked forward to the future in the gynecology department. With the praise of Unohana as an authority, patients who would come to see him in person would gradually appear, that is to say, after more than 2 months of silence, he could finally find an opportunity to start sowing seeds again. As for how to make the patient have some bleeding wounds, Senju Makao also had a plan in mind, that is, acupuncture. Of course, Senju Makao meant acupuncture, whether there is a disease or not, a free acupuncture. Thinking that his seeds of the forest will soon be able to take root and sprout in large quantities in the Seireitei, Senju Makao was in a good mood, and the loneliness in his heart immediately dissipated a lot. Sure enough, I have been lonely and depressed for the past few months. It may be related to the inability to sow seeds. The speed of spiritual power accumulation has not been improved for a long time. A needle, sowing seeds, how can there be any loneliness? Except happiness, there is no other emotion. Senju Makao murmured, and after quickly solving the breakfast problem, he hurried to the gynecology department, ready to start a new day. On the other side, as the captains meeting day once a month in the Seireitei, the captains of the squads in the entire Seireitei and their vice-captains almost all gathered towards the first squad early. As the first division slowly closed the door, it also meant that the meeting in the Seireitei, which was second only to the central 46th chamber in authority and would affect the direction of the entire Soul Society, was about to begin. In the large and majestic conference room, captain-level Shinigami wearing different captains' feathers stood in 2 rows facing each other, with completely different squad numbers written on the captains' feathers behind them. A total of 12 different figures stood in this conference room, and almost every figure faintly exuded a terrifying spiritual pressure that ordinary Shinigami could not bear. Finally, as the ancient conference bell rang outside the conference room, the beginning of this meeting was announced. Standing at the top was a man with a hideous cross-shaped scar on the right side of his head, a waist-length silver-white beard tied with a purple band on his chest, and a one written on the pure white captain's feather that was simply draped over his body. The majestic old man opened his slightly squinting eyes and scanned the 11 captains in front of him. Except for the position of the captain of the 10th Division, which was still vacant, the rest of the captains had already arrived and slowly spoke. Captains, the meeting is officially starting, in the adjutant waiting room near the captain's meeting room. As the terrifying spiritual pressure faintly transmitted from the next meeting room subsided, a large number of vice-captains who followed the captain to attend the meeting gradually relaxed. It's really scary. I can only say that they are worthy at being the captains-in-chief. I'm in awe of the spiritual pressure that is inadvertently leaked in just one word or action. The vice-captain of the 9th Division, Cheng-ge, who has green wavy short hair and wears a red scarf and looks quite lively, patted his chest and couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, muttering. The tall and burly vice-captain of the 3rd Division, Seireitei, female, who exudes a certain extreme style, nodded and said in awe. Of course, that's the captain-in-chief, who is completely different from ordinary Shinigami. I'm afraid that even if we want to attend the meeting, we can't stand in front of the captain-in-chief's door. However, Kusakayaru, who participated in the meeting for the first time as an adjutant, couldn't help but smack his mouth and shouted. Well, I'm just so bored. How long do I have to stay here? The vice-captain of the 1st Squadron, Chojiro Suzuki, who had a conspicuous back-combed short white hair and a black mustache, said in a serious tone. Please be quiet, vice-captain of the 11th Squadron. The meeting time is determined by the content of the matters to be discussed. As adjutants, we only need to wait patiently for the captain's instructions to provide corresponding assistance. However, as Chojiro Suzuki finished speaking subconsciously, he looked at the short-legged pink little lily in front of him with her big, blinking eyes of confusion, and his serious expression could not hold back. Chapter 30 comes from Senju Cheng's warning. What kind of effective assistance can Kusakayaru provide? I'm afraid it's good enough that he doesn't cause trouble. Chojiro felt powerless in his heart, and always felt that if he spoke a little harshly to Kusakayaru, he would be committing a crime. Why did Captain Zaraka choose Kusakayaru as the vice-captain? This is completely nonsense. Chojiro subconsciously expressed doubts about the intelligence and thinking of this Kenpachi, and seriously doubted that Kusakayaru was completely unable to bear the responsibility of being the vice-captain. However, in order to facilitate the captains to manage the squad more reasonably and effectively, and to ensure the captain's status and power in the squad, the power to appoint the lieutenants of each squad is almost reserved in the hands of the captains. Therefore, although Chojiro nominally has the power to restrain and govern the lieutenants of each squad, he cannot forcibly interfere with the specific issue of the appointment of lieutenants. In the end, after staring at Kusakayaru for several seconds, Chojiro was completely defeated and said something in a serious manner. There is not much content in this meeting, and it should be over soon. Suddenly, most of the vice-captains gathered in the adjutant waiting room had a little more joy on their faces. After all, unlike the captains who are really high level and have the right to propose, discuss and make decisions, the reason why these adjutants have to stay here is just the rules. In fact, they have nothing to do and are strictly required not to leave the adjutant waiting room without permission. Great, thank you, white-haired weird uncle. Kusakayaru thanked him with a sweet smile, but the title made Chojiro Sparrow's expression completely unable to hold back. White-haired weird uncle. At this moment, Chojiro Sparrow seemed to have suffered some kind of critical attack, and his originally majestic and solemn eyes became a little more autistic and gloomy. And Aizen Sosek, who was sitting in a corner of the adjutant waiting room, watching everything with a gentle expression, looked at the vice-captains in front of him one by one with an unusually kind and obscure look. Anyone who saw him would think he was a typical good person. Vice Captain Aizen, what are you looking at? Suddenly, a somewhat harsh voice sounded beside Aizen Sosok. Aizen Sosok turned his head kindly and saw that the person in front of him was Yamada Seireitei, the vice captain of the 4th Division, who he didn't usually meet. No, it's just that it's great to see that everyone is as energetic as always. Aizen Sosok answered gently. Upon hearing this, Yamada Seireitei subconsciously felt a sense of favor in his heart, and his poisonous tongue instinct was uncontrollably activated. It's just as the rumors say. Vice Captain Aizen is really a gentleman. He always pays attention to the joys and sorrows around him. He is the kind of perfect existence that ordinary people can't pretend. In an instant, Aizen Sosok's eyes hidden behind that black-framed glasses flashed a different color. After several guesses emerged, he turned and responded gently as always. Vice Captain Yamada is just as the rumors say. His words are really to the point. I just don't know what Vice Captain Yamada wants to talk to me about this time. Yamada Seireitei shrugged and said a name. Senju Cheng. Just when Yamada Seireitei paused and was about to continue speaking, Aizen Sosok nodded and said. I see. I understand. Got it. Yamada Seireitei glanced at Aizen Sosok with his somewhat harsh and cold eyes, and some doubts flashed through his mind. He hadn't even finished saying Captain Unohana's instructions, which meant that the 4th Division rejected Vice Captain Aizen's request to Senju Cheng. Aizen Sosok already understood it. However, Yamada Seireitei changed his mind and recalled the rumors about Aizen Sosok during this period. He realized that he might have been rejected too many times, so he had expected it long ago, right? With this thought, Yamada Seireitei didn't say much and simply walked to the other side. In short, when Seireitei Yamada now faces those gentle-looking men, he always thinks of Senju Cheng and feels uncomfortable inexplicably. But what Seireitei Yamada didn't notice was that there was a flash of murderous intent in Aizen Sosok's seemingly gentle eyes. Senju Cheng, did he see something? So he warned me through Seireitei Yamada. A perfect existence that ordinary people can't disguise? It's really interesting. Cheng, I received your warning. I didn't expect that in addition to your talents in Kido and medical skills that ordinary Shinigami can't reach, your observation skills are also quite sharp, probably not inferior to the level of Hirako Cheng. Thinking of this, Aizen Sosok clearly recalled every reaction of Senju Cheng last night in his mind, and many of the doubts were completely explained, especially the invisible sense of alienation and vigilance. Although I don't think you can really perceive my plan, it's better to pinch the ant that accidentally intends to jump to death. Aizen Sosok's expression did not change at all. He looked at them gently as if the years were quiet and good, but he was thinking secretly in his heart. And just as Chojiro Suzuki said, this captain's meeting did not last long. As the ancient bell representing the end of the meeting rang, the doors slowly opened, and the captains walked out of the meeting room one after another. Among them, the captain of the 11th Division, Kinpachi Zaraki, looked unhappy. He waved to Yaoru Kusaka and strode out of the 1st Division. Aizen Sosok glanced around and found his captain, Mako Hirako. He unexpectedly found that Mako Hirako was walking side by side with Retsu Unohana and the captain of the 2nd Division, Yorishi Shikane, and they were still talking and laughing. Aizen Sosok quickly followed their respective captains with Seireitei Yamada and the vice captain of the 2nd Division, Kiyoshi Omida. The conversation between Retsu Unohana and the other two captains also reached Aizen Sosok's ears. Ha ha ha, senior, you just refused too straightforwardly. Captain Zaraki's face is not very good. Hirako Cheng said nonchalantly. There is no way. Senju Cheng is my beloved disciple. How could I give him to the 11th Division? Unohana Retsu replied with a smile. Senju Cheng? I seem to have heard this name somewhere in the past 2 days. To be praised so much by Captain Unohana, he must be a very interesting Shinigami, right? Shuin Yorishi asked. In response, Unohana Retsu, who walked out of the gate of the 1st Division's dormitory, smiled but said nothing. After saying goodbye to Hirako Cheng and Shuin Yorishi with impeccable etiquette, he glanced at Aizen Sosok seemingly unintentionally, and then took Yamada Seireitei to the direction of the 4th Division's dormitory. Hirako Cheng, who was wearing the 5th Division's captain's Aori and had long yellow bands, looked quite nonchalant, staring at Unohana Retsu's back and said with emotion. Senior, you are such a gentle person. You care so much about your disciples. These words seem to have a different meaning in the ears of Aizen Sosok. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 31. The Dimension No One Has Touched. Under the sunlight, Aiden Sosok, who was standing behind Hirako Mako, lowered his head slightly, his glasses reflecting the light. "Ah, Captain Shifen Yuan, see you later." Hirako Mako turned his head and said hello to Shifen Yuan Yorishi, and then took Aizen to the 5th Division's barracks in another direction. However, just when Hirako Mako walked to a relatively secluded road, he paused, turned his head and looked at Aizen Sosok behind him. His expression seemed to reveal amusement and inquiry, and asked, "Vice Captain Aizen, where did you go last night?" Aizen Sosok answered calmly, "I went to the 4th Division to visit team members Takemoto Natsuki and Makamai Nozomi." "Oh, really?" Hirako Mako responded without comment, tilted his head, and then stared at Aizen Sosok without saying a word. Facing the threat of a captain-level Shinigami, Aiden Sosok's expression did not change at all from beginning to end. He still stared at Hirako Mako quietly, as if he had no guilt about his answer. After a moment, Hirako Mako grinned, revealing his white teeth that made people feel a little cold, and said, "Aizen, don't try to do anything unnecessary. My eyes will be on you all the time." "How is it possible?" "Captain Hirako, I'm just fulfilling my duties as a vice-captain." Aiden Sosok answered calmly. "Humph, put away your tricks, Aizen, I can't hide your danger. As long as I'm here, I will never allow you to act recklessly." Hirako Mako sneered, not hiding his vigilance and disgust towards Aizen, and continued towards the 5th Division's barracks with a seemingly sloppy pace. Aiden Sosok showed a peaceful smile and continued to follow Hirako Makoto's pace, but his eyes revealed a moment of contempt and arrogance. "Captain Hirako, you are still so arrogant. Can your eyes really see anything?" This is the common problem of so-called smart people. They always think they have seen everything. Different dimensions. How can what you see be real? Hirako Makoto and Senju Makoto are the same. They deliberately revealed a little flaw and led you to see something. You always thought that the judgment was completely based on your own ability, and then the reaction you made was completely exposed to your heart and thoughts. It's really too ridiculous. Senju Makoto. It's a pity. I wanted to keep a chess piece next to Captain Unohana and use your talent, it's really too annoying. Looking around, no one can touch my dimension. Aiden Sosok's eyes flickered slightly, and he had a gentle and steady smile on his face as always, but he followed Hirako Mako diligently like an impeccable vice-captain. On the other side, after Unohana Retsu and Hirako Mako left one after another, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, the captain of the 2nd Division and the commander-in-chief of the secret mobile team, did not leave directly, but stayed where she was, as if thinking about something. Is this the disciple that the senior cares about so much? It really makes people care. As soon as she thought of this, Shifen Yuan Yorishi almost instantly developed a strong curiosity, and the whole person seemed to be scratched by a cat. While shaking her short purple hair gracefully, her slender fingers repeatedly tapped her brown face, and she could hardly suppress the urge in her heart to explore this curiosity immediately. Go secretly, Senior won't find out, right? No, if Senior finds out, it will be a terrible thing. Suddenly, Shifen Yuan Yorishi seemed to recall something not so good, and her eyes instantly became clear. However, simply sending someone to investigate is also my duty as the secret mobile commander, for the safety of Seireitei. Thinking of this, Shifen Yuan Yorishi's face immediately bloomed with a smile, and then turned his head to look behind him. A pile of fat meat was looking at Shifen Yuan Yorishi with a seductive expression. As the vice-captain of the 2nd Division, Omida Kiyoshi had no pride and dignity like the vice-captains of other divisions. He was almost undisguisedly trying to please Shifen Yuan Yorishi. Although he looked like a meat mounting, he deliberately spoke in a low voice. "Master Yorishi, please give me your orders." Facing Omida Kiyoshi, whose weight and body were almost 5 times his own, Shifen Yuan Yorishi couldn't help but twitch his mouth and commented, "That's disgusting, Omida Kiyoshi. Your body shape severely limits the upper limit of your instant step." "I'm sorry, it's just that this is hereditary in the family, and this kind of body shape can more calmly withstand attacks from Master Yorishi. This is the innate duty and mission of the Omida family." Omida Kiyoshi said in an excited tone, and his expression seemed to be blooming with a kind of glory. "Humph!" Shifen Yuan Yorishi snorted coldly, turned his head back again, put his hands together in the wide sleeves of the captain's ayori, and said as he walked forward, "How is your son Omida Kichiyo?" It's about time for him to went to the Shinigami training camp to temper him. At least he should limit his body shape from a young age. Although Shifu Yorishi's tone seemed full of disgust, Omida Kiyoshi's face showed an excited expression when he heard it. He knelt down to Shifu Yorishi without hesitation and said loudly, "Thank you very much, Master Yorishi." Yorishi said without any intention of stopping his steps and looked back. "Don't embarrass me here, get out of my sight, just remember to continue to serve the Shiwuin family for generations to come." "Yes, Master Yorishi." Immediately, the plump body of Omida Kiyoshi rolled on the ground, and disappeared quickly in front of Shiwuin Yorishi with an extremely smooth and round posture, which made Shiwuin Yorishi a little stunned, and couldn't help but muttered in a low voice, "You can use instant steps while rolling. TSK, aren't these idiots of the Omida family practicing some unique way of escaping? So that they can dodge and escape in an emergency when they are knocked down?" As Shiwuin Yorishi walked to a relatively secluded place, he nodded slightly. The next moment, 9 black shadows appeared around Shiwuin Yorishi, all wearing black clothes with only a pair of eyes exposed, and their slightly withdrawn zanpakutō fully prepared for battle. Shiwuin Yorishi swept his eyes and then fell on a petite figure half kneeling on the right, and spoke. "B, you stay." Chapter 32. Feng Shui Falling. As Yorishi Shifu Yuan's voice fell, the other black shadows disappeared again, leaving only the petite figure half kneeling in the same place, with her head slightly lowered, waiting for orders. Yorishi Shifu Yuan directly stretched out his hand to lift the chin of the petite figure, forcing her to look at him, and directly tore off her mask. In front of Yorishi Shifu Yuan was a delicate face the size of a palm, with slightly tender and fair skin, but a look of panic in the eyes. Yorishi Shifu Yuan looked at the look that seemed to urge him to bully her, and couldn't help asking jokingly, "Why doesn't my little bee dare to look at me?" As Ai Hoshino looked around in a panic, her chest was obviously rising and falling, and she spoke in a stuttering tone. Yuki, here? No. Yorishi's eyes lit up, and he got closer to Ai Hoshino's slightly flushed face, blowing hot air and asked, "Not here? Where else?" Suddenly, looking at Shiwuin Yorishi's equally exquisite and beautiful face, which seemed to be getting closer and closer, Ai Hoshino was almost steaming all over, and her misty eyes were about to close slowly and uncontrollably. However, the next moment, Yorishi let go of Ai Hoshino as if she had stolen some fish, and laughed with her hands on her hips without any noble attitude. "Ha, B, you are so funny." Ai Hoshino lowered her head quickly, not daring to look at Shiwuin Yorishi again, and said weakly, "Yuki, please don't tease your subordinate anymore. That won't do, B, you will be teased by me for the rest of your life." Listening to Shiwuin Yorishi's seemingly cheating words, Ai Hoshino's little ears were almost as red as jade, and her heartbeat accelerated uncontrollably. After Shiwuin Yorishi laughed, he smacked his lips, as if he was savoring the fishy smell he had just stolen, and spoke. "Feng, I'll give you a mission. Go to the 4th Division and investigate a guy called Senju Cheng. Do you understand?" "Yes." Feng Shui let out a long sigh, forcing herself to get out of the panic and loss of composure just now, and said in a deep voice, "Ahem, Feng, don't be so serious. And that guy is the disciple of Captain Unahana. In order to avoid misunderstandings, don't investigate secretly in the way of the Shinigami." After a pause, Shifu Yorishi continued, "You should approach Senju Cheng as a patient. I need to know as much information about him as possible." "I understand, Master Yorishi." Feng Shui nodded, and her figure quickly disappeared from Shifu Yorishi as if she was escaping. Shifu Yorishi looked at the direction where Feng Shui left, and walked forward again in a good mood, but the direction was not the 2nd Division's barracks, but went straight to the 6th Division's barracks. "Ryoko, your sister Yorishi is here." She had been suppressing her curiosity about Senju Cheng, and now she seemed to have found a way to vent. In the gynecology department of the 4th Division, Senju Cheng felt that she had a myocardial infarction and needed Captain Unahana's personal rescue. When Senju Cheng opened the door of the office with a promising future in his heart, he saw that the originally not so large office was filled with dozens of strong men. His originally calm figure almost subconsciously took a step back. In the cramped space, dozens of strong men crowded together, sweat soaking their clothes, dozens of eyes full of some kind of enthusiasm and expectation. At this moment, Senju Cheng's pupils trembled, and he almost instinctively doubted whether he had walked into the wrong place. Mirror flowers and water moons, that's right, it must be mirror flowers and water moons. Fake, all fake. Damn and Sosik, when did he have a hallucination? There can't be so many strong men hiding in my office. There should only be the delicate and cute Yoki Riza. Just when Senju Cheng was trying hard to convince himself, a figure suddenly slid out from above the heads of dozens of strong men with an extremely smooth posture, then half knelt on the ground, posing a middle school posture that made Senju Cheng's teeth ache. Long time no see, my friend. Finally, the day we meet again has come. This is fate, destiny. However, before Madarome Ikaku finished speaking, Senju Cheng suddenly pulled the door shut again. Wait, seeing this, Madarome Ikaku instinctively wanted to stop Senju Cheng, and his round and smooth forehead also stretched out a little from the office. Bang! Ah! The next moment, Madarome Ikaku's head was completely caught by the door, and he let out a scream that echoed in the gynecology department. Too tight, Senju, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, stop it, let go. For a moment, Senju Cheng, who was standing in the aisle, felt the strange looks from all around. She is dead. His fame, no, the image that he had spent more than 2 months to build in the department, was destroyed. Even with the language of the female Shinigami, it would probably spread throughout the entire Jingling court in a few days. Senju Cheng's eyes gradually became empty, and his hand holding the door slowly loosened. Senju, you bastard, I brought so many people to take care of your business. Then, before Madarome Ikaku could finish speaking, Senju Cheng covered Madarome Ikaku's bald head with his palm and pushed it into the office, and then he followed him in. Bang! Finally, with the rough sound of the door being pulled shut, the door of the office was closed, temporarily covering up their confused and shocked looks. Inside the office, Senju Cheng twitched and smiled, and asked in a gentle tone. Ikaku, have you decided where to bury yourself? What? Madarome Ikaku rubbed his head with 2 red marks on it, not realizing the seriousness of the problem at all, and said as a matter of course. I'm not the kind of man who would die in battle easily. Really? Yes, sometimes death can be a luxury. A sinister word came out of Senju Cheng's seemingly gentle face, and the big men in the entire office felt a little chilly for some reason, and subconsciously clamped their legs together. No. Why do we instinctively clamp our legs together under Senju Cheng's aura? Just when these big men from the 11th Division were all confused for a moment. Since you trust me so much, I must not let you down, right? Senju Cheng took out a pair of white gloves from his pocket and put them on, and asked. Let me give you some small treatment that is in line with the gynecological department. Chapter 33. Broken B and I Hoshino. Small treatment. For a moment, under the invisible aura of Senju Cheng, the big men of the 11th Division present were inexplicably panicked. This posture, this tone, no matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a small treatment. More importantly, this Senju Cheng clearly didn't burst out any terrifying spiritual pressure. Why did it feel inexplicably scary? This, Madarome Ikaku finally realized that something seemed to be wrong. He reacted and realized that Senju Cheng in front of him seemed a little different from usual. He smiled dryly and said, Senju, how about I come to visit you another day? However, Senju Cheng moved his feet and blocked the door and said, no need, I'm here now. At the same time, at the door of the gynecology department, the petite Hoshiko, who changed into a normal death suit, looked at the surrounding environment and followed the sign to Senju Cheng's office located in a relatively remote corner. This place is the first time Hoshiko has come here. In the past, even if Hoshiko felt unwell, she would usually go to the pediatric department of the 4th Division for treatment. Now, when Hoshiko went to the gynecology department, it was barely not out of place, but her petite figure still attracted the attention of the passing dead gods from time to time. Finally, just as Hoshiko followed the sign and found the office of Makoto Senju and Rizaoki, she was about to raise her hand to knock on the door when she suddenly heard a series of suppressed male groans. For a moment, Hoshiko paused, and several crazy scenes flashed through her mind. After hesitating for a while, Hoshiko first confirmed the nameplate hanging on the office again. Makoto Senju and Rizaoki. Could it be, not, maybe, should? Hoshiko slowly put down her hand and carefully put her ear to it. Fen Shaoling's eyes couldn't help but widen a little. Is this really the gynecology department? I want to go back to the pediatrics department. Subconsciously, Fen Shaoling's still young heart sprouted a haze. However, just as Fen Shaolin, with a somewhat uncertain face, was hesitating about what to do, she suddenly heard another male groaning and wailing in the office again. At this moment, Fen Xiaoling only felt a confusion in her head, and she could no longer imagine how chaotic the scene in the office would be. However, the more wailing and groaning that continued to sound, the more Fen Xiaoling's worldview suffered an incomparable and huge impact. How many people are there? Fen Xiaoling tried to close her eyes and sense the spiritual veins that belong to the god of death in the office. Normally, the spiritual veins that a spirit with the power of the god of death emits are different from those of ordinary spirits, but a unique red. However, the next moment, in Fen Xiaoling's eyes, she saw that in the office in front of her, there were densely packed red spiritual veins like waves rushing towards her. So many. It's hard to understand. For a moment, the young Fen Xiaoling's mind was completely stuck. Just then, bang! In front of Fen Xiaoling, the door of the office was suddenly opened, and one after another, big men with sweat on their foreheads, pale faces, and awkward steps came out. 1, 5, 20, 50, it was as if she had seen 20 or so big men walking down a wall in Hongguan for the first time. Fen Xiaoling couldn't understand how more than 50 male god of death could be hidden in a small office. Can they fit? Hoshino suddenly felt that what she had learned in the Xing army in the past, how to hide in a small space as much as possible, seemed to have room for improvement. Finally, as a seemingly gentle boy stood at the door of the office, smiling and waving goodbye to the male dead gods who left, the wave of big men that kept coming out finally stopped. Suddenly, Senju Cheng noticed the cute Hoshino standing aside with a dull expression. The cute and well-behaved long hair with bangs, the face still hid some childishness, and the petite and slender figure. Senju Cheng looked at the dazed Hoshino and asked, "Hello, is there anything wrong?" "No, nothing." At this moment, Hoshino almost instinctively wanted to turn around and run away. However, just as Hoshino took a step, she recalled the order given to her by Master Yoichi. No. Master Yoichi's mission is absolute, and we must get the information from Makoto Senju, for Master Yoichi. All this is Master Yoichi's order. Almost in an instant, Hoshino's expression became firm, and she asked softly with gritted teeth. "Hello, is this Makoto Senju?" "Yes." Makoto Senju nodded, and felt that the petite and slender girl in front of him looked familiar, but he couldn't remember her for a moment. "Excuse me, I'm Hoshiko of the 2nd Division. Is it convenient for you to treat me?" Hoshiko asked. Hoshiko. Makoto Senju's eyes moved slightly, and he reacted almost instantly. Makoto Senju was naturally quite unfamiliar with this name, but in the 2 months since he joined the Seireitei, Makoto Senju has also gained a basic understanding of various divisions and organizations. Among them, the captain of the 2nd Division and the commander-in-chief of the secret mobile force have almost been concurrently held by the Xiong family, one of the 4 great nobles of the Seireitei, for almost generations. The current captain of the 2nd Division and the commander-in-chief of the secret mobile force is undoubtedly Xiong Yorishi, who is known as the god of flash in Makoto Senju's impression. And because the 2nd Division and the secret mobile force generation are controlled by the Xiong family, there are a large number of nobles in the 2nd Division who have served the Xiong family for generations. The B family is a lower-class noble family in the 2nd Division who are proud to serve the Xiong family for generations. The head of the B family will inherit the name of Saofen to show his willingness to die for the Xiong family. So, the woman in front of me is the one who will inherit the name of Saofen in the future, and is also that captain of the 2nd Division after Xiong Yorishi defected from Soul Society. For a moment, Senju Makoto looked at Ayahachi with a little more burning eyes, and Ayahachi subconsciously took a step back in shock. At this moment, Senju Makoto's smile was quite gentle. "Don't be afraid, I'm not a bad person. Elbow, come with me into the house first." Chapter 34. Is Carlo the thief legal? However, although Senju Makoto's smile looked quite harmless and gentle, in the eyes of Hoshiko, it was like a bear uncle who wanted to secretly lick honey, quite untrustworthy. And Senju Makoto also realized that his eyes seemed a little too anxious, and accidentally exposed some of his inner thoughts. "Well, it seems that it is necessary to get a pair of glasses for myself." At this moment, Senju Makoto suddenly felt the importance of glasses, which can not only modify the face to be more gentle and harmless, but also cover up the slight fluctuations in the eyes. However, when Senju Makoto just realized that Hoshiko in front of him was the future captain of the 2nd team, he couldn't help but feel happy. After all, if you can leave the forest seed in the body of a captain-level Shinigami in advance, the benefits are undoubtedly huge, far better than the benefits of leaving the seeds in the body of an ordinary Shinigami. What's more, it is also 100 benefits to establish a good relationship with the future captain of the second team in advance. Although Senju Makotao has now firmly embraced Unohana Retsu's beautiful legs, as an adult, how could Senju Makotao hang himself on a crooked tree? It just so happened that the seats accumulated for more than 2 months had just been left on the more than 50 men of the 11th Division. Now there was still some stock, so it was not in the embarrassing situation of facing the delicate Ai Hoshino who had no seeds. However, at this time, Senju Makotao also understood that he could not be too radical, otherwise he might scare away Ai Hoshino, who was still in her teenage years. Then, Senju Makotao just nodded slightly to Ai Hoshino, and did not continue to work or force Ai Hoshino, and calmly turned around and walked back to the office. Ai Hoshino stood there and hesitated for a few seconds, and then walked into the office with a look of fearlessness. However, after Ai Hoshino entered the office, she did not forget to open the door as wide as possible, so that she could easily see the situation in the office from outside the corridor. This scene also made Senju Makotao's mouth twitch obscurely. Ai Hoshino, do you really think you are some weird uncle? After all, the age of Ai Hoshino and I on the surface is just quite close, we are all the same age, are you afraid that I will eat you? At most, I just want to borrow some fertile land to plant seeds. Alas, the current doctor-patient relationship really lacks basic trust. Senju Makotao secretly sighed that the doctor-patient relationship in the Seireitei was also quite bad, and calmly and gently asked Ai Hoshiko, who was already sitting in front of him. Name: Ai Hoshiko. Gender: female. The squad you belong to is the second squad, right? Yes. Age: 46. Hearing this, Senju Makotao's movements subconsciously paused, and he couldn't help but look up at Ai Hoshiko, who looked tender and smooth. Is there a problem? Ai Hoshiko asked nervously. No, Senju Makotao answered with a somewhat weird tone, but he still couldn't get used to this kind of disharmony in his heart. According to normal human standards, Ai Hoshiko looks no more than 16 years old, but Ai Hoshiko, who was born in Soul Society, is actually 46 years old. But even so, Ai Hoshiko's body is still not completely mature. In other words, only Karose is truly legal in Soul Society. Then, Senju Makotao calmed down and asked. Excuse me, where do you feel uncomfortable? However, Senju Makotao's question confused Ai Hoshiko. Yes, I'm not sick. For a while, Ai Hoshiko hesitated for a long time, not knowing what to say. After all, Ai Hoshiko knew that if she told a lie, then Senju Makotao, the disciple of Captain Unohana, would definitely be able to see through it easily, which would undoubtedly be detrimental to Ai Hoshiko's intelligence collection. Senju Makotao narrowed his eyes and almost instantly realized that something was wrong. Even if she was very reluctant to see a doctor, she shouldn't be unable to say anything, and, Ai Hoshiko, Second Division, secret maneuver. Senju Makotao did not forget that the Second Division not only had the responsibility of monitoring the present world, but also one of their tasks was to monitor the interior of the Seireitei. Was it an investigation? Or a test? Senju Makotao's fingers hidden under the table tapped unconsciously. While thinking constantly, his expression did not reveal any flaws. Finally, under the patient gaze of Senju Makotao, Fen Shaoling casually pointed to several parts of her body and described them vaguely. Anyway, I just feel pain here occasionally, and sometimes I feel uncomfortable there. Really? How often does the pain happen? Senju Makotao asked. About once every 1 or 2 days. Well, let me do a simple check for you first. Please lie down on the bed over there, okay? Senju Makotao asked gently. Fen Shaoling turned her head to look at the simple bed, but there were still a lot of wet spots that looked like sweat stains on the edge, but they might not be. Finally, Fen Shaoling looked back at the still open door, and then she pretended to be calm and answered. Yes, yes. Well, Senju Makotao gestured to Fen Shaoling while putting on a new pair of white gloves for himself. However, just as Senju Makotao touched the abdomen where Fen Shaoling said, Fen Shaoling felt that almost her whole body was completely tense, and even the 10 petite toes exposed were stretched straight. Relax, Senju Makotao said softly, looking at Ai Hoshiko with clear and gentle eyes, and asked. Is it here? Rubbing like this, does it hurt? Ai Hoshiko bit her lower lip tightly, feeling the strange feeling in her lower abdomen, and inexplicably remembered the scene of Yorishi playing tricks. She almost felt her mind go blank, and answered instinctively. No pain. No feeling at all. Senju Makotao asked with a frown. Yes, I feel no, that's not right, no, Ai Hoshiko answered with a trembling voice. A hint of doubt flashed in Senju Makoto's eyes, and then he simply checked the rest of the body according to what Aihosho said. Finally, Senju Makoto looked at Aihosho, who was lying on the bed with her back to her, showing her petite and slender figure, and he was almost certain of one thing in his heart. That is, Akiko is definitely faking illness. Judging from the medical system inherited by Soul Society, she is undoubtedly very healthy, her spirit body is stable, and she has not noticed any abnormality or deficiency in her spirit body. Her spirit energy flows normally, her spiritual pressure is stable, and her veins are not damaged. Except for a certain degree of fatigue, wear and tear on a few joints and muscles, the only minor problem seems to be a slight retardation in development. Chapter 35 Developmental Delay. So, was Aihosho really sent by the 2nd Division to investigate me? Makoto Senju stroked his chin, almost certain of this conclusion, otherwise Makoto Senju would never have thought of the reason why Aihosho suddenly appeared here. Looking at the entire Seireitei, I'm just a member of the 4th Division with no outstanding ability, but as a disciple of the sensitive Captain Unohana, it seems reasonable that I would attract the attention of the Seireitei's high-level officials to a certain extent, but the 2nd Division is not secretly monitoring and investigating. And they should not think that I am dangerous, so it should be a routine investigation. It seems necessary to cooperate with Aihosho. Otherwise if Aihosho can't investigate anything, it will be a small hidden danger, which may attract the other secret mobile members to investigate secretly. Just as Makoto Senju fell into deep thought, Makoto Senju ordered Aihosho to lie on the bed in what Aihosho considered to be a shameful posture on the grounds of inspection. Her somewhat distracted eyes revealed full of despair and grief. Master Yoichi, I'm not clean anymore. At this moment, Aihosho bit her lips tightly, trying not to let herself make a cowardly sound. After the mission is over, I must kill this bastard, at this time. You must be patient. You must be patient. This is all for Master Yoichi. In order to complete Master Yoichi's mission, to contact Senju Makoto as a patient and obtain as much information as possible, Aihosho's chest, which was almost completely close to the bedboard without a single gap, rose and fell gently, and the back of Master Yoichi kept appearing in her mind, strengthening her belief. Senju Makoto, who gradually had an idea in his mind, glanced at the girl in front of him again, and finally fell on Aihosho's slender and small jade feet. The 10 toes were compact and white, and it seemed that due to nervousness, the jade feet were maintaining a slightly arched state. The most lovely thing was that I didn't know whether it was because of nervousness or because it was stretched too long. The jade feet seemed to be covered with a layer of pink color. It must be said that this is the most beautiful jade foot that Makoto Senju has ever seen in the entire Soul Society. It is comparable to a work of art. Even the respected Captain Unohana is slightly inferior in this respect. If it was some foot control pervert, I'm afraid they would have the crazy idea that being trampled to death by this jade foot would be a kind of happiness, right? However, Makoto Senju is not the kind of death god who is addicted to low-level interests. Moreover, Makoto Senju also understands that as a disciple of teacher Unohana, he must have moral integrity and bottom line, otherwise, he will die. Well, it's okay, please get up. Makoto Senju said in a gentle and peaceful tone, as if the inspection just now was just a normal routine. Then, Makoto Senju sat back at his desk, drank a sip of the tea that cleared the liver, brightened the eyes, reduced fire and calmed the mind, and spoke to Aihosho who sat in front of him with a somewhat expressionless face. I just checked you briefly. There is no problem. In addition to some hidden injuries caused by overtraining, there are also some problems with developmental delay. On the real medical issues, Senju Makoto did not have any idea of faking it. This is also the most basic respect for the Iwado and medical skills that Senju Makoto has learned. Although, if you falsify the symptoms, it is often easy to achieve what Senju Makoto wants. After a pause, Senju Makoto looked at Aihosho and continued. As for the pain problem you mentioned, I can't confirm it for the time being. You can try to find Yokigoshi for diagnosis, and maybe come back to see me for a follow-up visit when it recurs later. Aihosho answered almost without hesitation. No, I'll see you for a follow-up visit next time. I still trust Captain Unohana's disciple. Senju Makoto agreed without a change of expression. In the end, after indirectly confirming Aihosho's purpose, he lowered his head to record the medical records for Aihosho. Unlike the group of guys that Madarame had brought to cause trouble, Aihosho was apparently doing a serious consultation, so according to the rules of the 4th Division, she needed to keep a record of the patient's medical records. This was not only to facilitate follow-up visits and treatments for the patients, but also to keep the relevant information of the Shinigami in the Seireitei for a long time. However, Iohoshiko watched Makoto Senju write down the 4 words developmental delay in the medical record, and the expressionless Iohoshiko was almost biting her teeth secretly. Damn bastard, and 100% At this moment, Iohoshiko, who had received strict Cheng-ge and aristocratic education since childhood, rarely said a lot of impolite words in her heart. However, when Makoto Senju finished writing and looked up at Iohoshiko showed a somewhat stiff smile and said, "Thank you so much, Dr. Senju. You're welcome. It is our 4th Division's responsibility to provide the most appropriate treatment for patients." Makoto Senju answered gently and kindly, and then continued. "In addition, the few hidden injuries on your body are very easy to solve. I can relieve them for you later through acupuncture and uido. However, the root cause is still overgraining or overfighting, so my suggestion to you is to take a break for a while." Listening to the gentle and caring tone, Iohoshiko, who was originally full of grief and anger towards Makoto Senju, couldn't help but warm her heart and was stunned for a moment. As a member of the Cheng army who joined the Shifunyuan Yorishi Guard at a young age, it all shows that Iohoshiko has made much more efforts than ordinary Cheng army. And in the past that was full of harshness and scolding, except for Master Yorishi, this was the first time that Iohoshiko heard such warm words. "Well? Are you listening? Miss B, if you are worried about the pressure in the squad, I can issue you a diagnosis in the name of the 4th squad, indicating that you need to rest for a while." After coming to her senses, Iohoshiko met Makoto Senju's eyes that seemed to be full of care and tenderness, and almost subconsciously lowered her head, and then quickly refused. "No need." "Really?" Senju Makoto's tone was filled with helplessness and regret, and he said, "No matter what, Miss B, you still need to take care of your body, especially since your body is still in the development stage. Excessive fighting and exercise will also have adverse effects, which is why your development is slightly delayed." At this moment, B.I. seemed to be touched by this unexpected concern, and replied with some true feelings. "You can't stop. If you stop, even if you slack off a little, you won't be able to catch up with Master Yorishi, and you won't be able to protect Master Yorishi." Chapter 36 Invitation. Is that so? Such moving will and belief. It's really enviable that Captain Shifunyuan has a subordinate like you. Makoto Senju said with some sighs and admiration. The words that indirectly affirmed Shifunyuan Yorishi's charm also made Iohoshiko smile unconsciously. Perhaps, the effect of directly praising Iohoshiko is not so good, but as long as you praise Shifunyuan Yorishi, then Iohoshiko is your good friend. Makoto Senju took in Iohoshiko's reaction with his gentle eyes, and couldn't help but sigh that Iohoshiko at this stage is far from being as cold and arrogant as she was in the later period when she served as captain. Iohoshiko now is really young and simple. "How about this?" Makoto Senju said with an idea. "I have a set of special medical massage techniques passed down from my ancestors, which can alleviate the problem of developmental delay to a certain extent. If you don't mind, you can come to me for treatment regularly. How about that?" At this moment, under Senju Makoto's gentle concern and harmless eyes, Iohoshiko's hostility towards Senju Makoto was almost alleviated by half, and she even had a little more trust. And Iohoshiko looked down at her slender and petite figure, and realized that her development was indeed a little too slow. "If I grow up a little more, will Master Yoichi like it?" Iohoshiko hesitated for a long time, and then slowly nodded, which was considered an agreement. Seeing this, Makoto Senju couldn't help but smile. In this way, he could treat Iohoshiko's developmental problems while trying to get along with her as much as possible. Moreover, by having regular face-to-face contact with Iohoshiko, he could also effectively avoid the surveillance of the rest of the second team. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. "In that case, then let's start today's treatment right now," Senju Makoto asked. "Okay." I nodded. Then, I lay back on the bed, but her mood was relatively calm. She even had time to look at Makoto Senju. Black hair and black eyes, delicate appearance, eyes always seemed to reveal tenderness, and after the treatment began, her eyes seemed extremely focused. Gradually, Aya, who had entered the state, instinctively began to record Makoto Senju's information as a professional Cheng-ge, including the height and weight, the appearance of the zanpakutō, the length of the fingers. Suddenly, Aya felt something piercing into her body, and she instinctively shouted a somewhat cute moan. The next moment, Aya's head almost completely flushed, and even her pair of jade feet seemed to be coated with a layer of pink again. Makoto Senju glanced at the jade feet that seemed to reflect Aya's true inner thoughts with some surprise. While continuing to give Aya acupuncture, he started chatting with Aya, distracting Aya's attention. Ms. B, is this your first time in the gynecology department? Yes. You are so brave to be alone, Ms. B. Actually, not really, no, Ms. B, you are really outstanding among your peers. I just tried to catch up with Master Yorishi. What kind of person is Captain Shifen Yuan? He must be very powerful as the sunshine. Upon hearing this question, Aya B's eyes lit up, as if her G-spot had been touched. For a moment, Aya B, who was being guided invisibly, became completely excited. She changed her previous somewhat cold appearance and kept talking excitedly, even completely forgetting that her body was being manipulated. While Makoto Senju responded to Aya B in a gentle tone, he continued to treat Aya B without stopping. The seed was naturally planted silently, and firmly took root and sprouted in Aya B's body. For a moment, Senju Makoto clearly felt that his spiritual power accumulation speed had increased slightly. It was naturally far inferior to that of Kinpachi's Araki, but it was also far superior to the nutrients provided by Ikaku Megurumi. Suddenly, Senju Makoto looked at Aya Hoshiko with a bit more ill-kindness, and sincerely wished Aya Hoshiko to become a captain-level Shinigami as soon as possible. After a long time, just when Aya Hoshiko, who had been talking about the strength, beauty, and dignity of Yorishi Shiuin, felt a little dry in the mouth and had to pause, she felt that her whole body seemed to be a little hot and warm. Ms. B, the treatment is over. It's best to postpone high-intensity training or fighting in the next few days. Senju Makoto said with a smile. Is it over? Aya Hoshiko asked blankly, trying to recall, but she only remembered that Senju Makoto's pair of gentle hands touched various parts of her body from time to time, but she didn't pay attention to what happened. Then, Aya Hoshiko stood up and tried to move her body, feeling that she seemed to be in an unprecedented good state. Thank you, Dr. Senju. At this moment, Aya Hoshiko sincerely thanked Makoto Senju. This young doctor who looks innocent and gentle doesn't look like a weird guy, does he? Those were moans and wails I heard outside before. Maybe they were the problem of the 11th Division members themselves. It was almost a misunderstanding. At least, in Aya Hoshiko's heart, Makoto Senju's image has changed from a weird pervert to a gentle and good doctor like Yorishi. You're welcome, Miss B. If you want to thank me, you should pay more attention to your health. Otherwise, even Captain Shifen Yuan will feel sorry for such an excellent subordinate, right? Hearing Makoto Senju's gentle and caring tone, Aya Hoshiko's recognition of Makoto Senju increased by 1 point. Just as Aya Hoshiko was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly remembered something. Oh no. I was just talking about Senju Cheng and completely forgot to try to find out the information about Dr. Senju. After hesitating for a while, Aya Hoshiko turned around and looked at Makoto Senju. What's wrong? Makoto Senju asked gently. Aya Hoshiko gritted her teeth and asked. To express my gratitude, can I treat you to a meal? Dinner? Makoto Senju met Aya Hoshiko's nervous and shy eyes. Just a meal. Generally speaking, Makoto Senju usually refuses invitations that are just for dinner, but Makoto Senju also understands that Aya Hoshiko's real purpose is probably to collect information, right? So, let's cooperate. It just so happens that Riza seems to have followed the rescue team to perform the mission early today. So there is no need to worry about being discovered slacking off. Makoto Senju thought silently, then looked up at the sky outside the window and said. Well, sure. It's almost time for the shift change. Then, Senju Makoto packed up his things in the office and headed towards the commercial street inside Seireitei while chatting and laughing with Hoshino Aya. Chapter 37 Glasses. The Seireitei is the political, military and even commercial center of the entire Soul Society. In addition to the 13th Gotti Squad's barracks, which are all in the Seireitei, the residences of nobles at all levels, the barracks of the Ghost Path, the Central 46th Chamber, the Great Spirit Book Corridor, the Maggot's Nest and other important institutions are almost all concentrated in the Seireitei. As for the Rukongai outside the Seireitei, it is just a place where ordinary souls live. In addition to the simple division of East 1st District and North 2nd District, the Shinigami will only go out to destroy the Hollows when Hollows attack souls. In addition, the Seireitei's management of the entire Rukongai is quite rough, and it is almost a laissez-faire state, which leads to the fact that most of the Rukongai areas are chaotic, dirty and disorderly. The extremely poor environment of the Rukongei, coupled with the fact that souls without spiritual power will not feel hungry, led to a slightly insufficient commercial soil in the Rukongei. Therefore, in order to satisfy the food and entertainment needs of the Shinigami and nobles at all levels, a commercial street for the Shinigami and nobles to relax on a daily basis was naturally formed inside the Seireitei. Makoto Senju had always heard of this commercial street, but since he joined the 4th Division, he had never had the opportunity to go out and play. Unlike the solemn and dull atmosphere of Seireitei on weekdays, as you step into the commercial street, you can see unruly death gods almost everywhere. In addition to the entertainment and catering industries, the shops on both sides also sell a variety of goods, which looks quite lively and prosperous. Wait, Makoto Senju suddenly called out to Bleach, who was walking in front of him and leading the way, and looked at an eyewear store and said, "Miss B, can you wait for me for a moment? I plan to buy a pair of glasses." Glasses? Bleach followed Makoto Senju into the eyewear store, subconsciously looking at Makoto Senju's bright and gentle eyes, and asked, "Dr. Senju has a problem with his eyesight." "A little bit. It may be because I have been practicing acupuncture too frequently recently and have overused my eyes, so sometimes I see things a little blurry." While Makoto Senju casually found an excuse to deal with Hoshino, his eyes swept through the different styles of glasses in the store. Among them, Makoto Senju first noticed the low-key black-framed glasses that Aizen Sosok wore. It is undoubtedly the best choice to modify temperament, cover up handsomeness, and hide eyes. However, Makoto Senju recalled that Unohana teacher once commented that he was somewhat similar to Aizen Sosok, so he decisively gave up the idea of wearing the same glasses as Aizen Sosok. Afterwards, Makoto Senju tried several pairs of glasses in a row under the recommendation of his boss, and found that he seemed to look more gentle and handsome, and he couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. After all, the main purpose of Senju Makoto buying glasses is to conceal himself. He doesn't want to be like Superman, who can't tell a difference when he puts on glasses and takes off his underwear. But at least he can't continue to improve his appearance. He can also effectively conceal his eyes and improve his harmlessness. At this time, Feng Shaoling handed over a pair of glasses with a silver-gray color and said, Dr. Senju, how about trying this pair?" Senju Makoto turned his head and looked at Feng Shaoling in surprise. Feng Shaoling looked at the street outside with a wondering look and said, "No, don't get me wrong, I just don't want to waste time. I definitely don't think you'll be more suitable wearing this pair of glasses." At the time, a gust of evening breeze blew in from the street outside, rolling up Feng Shaoling's black hair that was scattered on her shoulders, completely exposing her ruddy ears. Senju Makoto blinked his eyes, took the glasses from Feng Shaoling, and then tried to wear them in front of the mirror. As Makoto Senju took the glasses, Hoshino couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief, and she had already begun to regret her impulsive behavior. However, Hoshino, who had been trained by the Xing army for most of her life since she was old enough to understand, also had a rare opportunity to go shopping. This led to Hoshino seeing a pair of glasses that she was satisfied with, and she couldn't help but recommend them to Makoto Senju. "How is it?" Suddenly, Makoto Senju's voice, as gentle as the evening breeze, sounded. Hoshino instinctively turned her head to look at Makoto Senju, and saw that Makoto Senju's originally handsome face, under the background of the dark grey narrow-framed glasses, looked a little more mature and a little more noble. At this moment, Hoshino's mind inexplicably emerged with the appearance of Byakuya Kuchika, the young master of the Kuchika family, and compared him with Makoto Senju in front of her. In addition to the almost equal appearance, the boy in front of her inexplicably made Hoshino feel like she was bathed in spring breeze and felt close to him, unlike Byakuya Kuchika who pretended to be cold and arrogant. For some reason, listening to Makoto Senju's voice that seemed to blow into her heart, Hoshino felt a little flustered, as if her hidden thoughts were seen through, and she spoke in an unnatural and nervous tone. "Why are you asking me?" Facing Hoshino's tone that seemed to be cold and distant, Makoto Senju answered as gently as always. "These are the glasses recommended by Miss B, and Miss B's opinion is naturally very important." "No, not very good, just okay, right?" Hoshino answered in a somewhat unnatural voice. "Okay." Makoto Senju responded, and under Hoshino's slightly disappointed eyes, he took off the glasses and put them aside, and continued to choose other glasses. For a moment, Hoshino suddenly felt a little empty inside, as if the precious first gift in her life was rejected. Damn it, didn't I say it was okay? Didn't I express it clearly enough? But, what else do you want me to say? No. Why should I care so much? This has absolutely nothing to do with me. Just as Hoshiko was gritting her teeth, Makoto Senju handed the 2 glasses he had chosen to the boss and asked him to pack them. Then, in the face of Hoshiko's dazed expression, Makoto Senju directly put the dark grey narrow-framed glasses on his nose and asked, "Boss, how much of these 3 pairs of glasses in total?" 2,000 rings. P.S. I only found that the currency of Soul Society is divided into small rings, and the specific purchasing power is unknown, so it is convenient to understand it by referring to reality. Makoto Senju slightly stumped and asked, "Is it so expensive?" Although Senju Makoto is Unohana Retsu's disciple, he is just an ordinary soldier in the 4th Squad, and his monthly salary and allowance add up to only 6,000 rings. Of course, the reason why it is so low is that Senju Makoto has not seen any patients in the past 2 months, so he can only receive the lowest salary in the department. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 38. Who is she? This is already a very favorable price. The 2 pairs of glasses are 500 rings, especially the pair of glasses you are wearing is 1,000 rings, which is also worth the money. The material of the silver spirit steel alone is worth 700 rings. After a pause, the owner of the glasses shop seemed to notice Senju Makoto's embarrassment and said, "How about changing to a pair with a higher cost performance? I can give you an extra discount." "No need." Senju Makoto glanced at Feng Shui falling beside him and said, "I like this pair of glasses very much. Let's leave it at that." Then, Senju Makoto counted out 2,000 rings from his arms and handed them to the owner of the glasses shop. He took the other 2 pairs of glasses and left directly. At this moment, feeling that half of his salary was missing, Senju Makoto couldn't help but sigh for the evil jingling time nobles. It's really jingling time earning money and jingling time spending money. Don't even think about taking a penny home. Fortunately, Senju Makoto now lives in the captain's courtyard of Unohana Retsu, with food, lodging and sleeping provided, without any extra expenses. Otherwise, it would probably take only a few days for all the salary to be handed back to the nobles. Just when Senju Makoto once again deeply felt the importance of Captain Unohana to him, the somewhat embarrassed voice of Bleach sounded beside him. "Actually, you don't have to buy that pair of glasses. I haven't bought much before, so maybe my vision is not good." Senju Makoto pushed the glasses that he was not used to and said, "No, Miss B has a good vision. I like this pair of glasses very much." "Thank you, Miss B." In fact, Senju Makoto didn't care about Bleach when he was choosing glasses. He just compared them again and again and chose 3 pairs of glasses that were relatively in line with his plan. But Bleach heard this, and her face flashed a hint of ruddy, and her steps unconsciously quickened a few points and walked in front of Senju Makoto, but she was a little flustered in her heart. "You bastard, no, don't talk like it's a gift from me." Makoto Senju, who was walking behind Hoshiko, unconsciously looked at Hoshiko's back. It must be said that Hoshiko's figure is really too girly now. Makoto Senju, who is also still in the growth stage, is nearly 1.8 meters tall and has room to grow, but Hoshiko's height is probably only at Makoto Senju's chest. As Hoshiko walked to the front, Makoto Senju's attention was attracted by the veritable wasp waist. Slender and graceful, with moving curves, and a handheld, can this extremely slender waist really burst out with lethal force when practicing white fighting? Although Makoto Senju knew that Hoshiko would achieve the level of captain in the future, this doubt still subconsciously emerged in his heart at this moment. "We're here. Master Yorishi brought me to this yakiniku restaurant before. It was delicious. Is that okay?" Just as Hoshino turned around, Makoto Senju's eyes were still as gentle and calm as ever, and she answered, "No problem, Miss B decides." "Yeah." Then, Hoshino, who was a little immature in her behavior and words, pretended to be mature and started to communicate with the store owner in front of Makoto Senju, and then chose a seat near the window and sat down. Hoshino looked at the innocent boy in front of her who seemed to be curiously looking at the surrounding environment, and couldn't help but secretly cheer herself up in her heart. Okay, everything went well, and now we can really start to think of ways to get information. Wine. By the way, even the Honorable Master Yorishi will relax his guard after drinking, and we have to find a way to get Dr. Senju to drink later. Yes. I will definitely complete the task assigned by Master Yorishi perfectly soon, as the barbecue and sake were served one after another, under the somewhat clumsy initiative of Ayahakiko. Makoto Senju also acted like a pure and innocent boy who had just entered the Seireitei and was ignorant of the world. Especially at Ayahakiko's invitation, Makoto Senju took 2 sips of sake and took the initiative, completely losing his calm appearance in the department before. For a while, the atmosphere between Makoto Senju and Ayahakiko became more and more harmonious and loving, and they recounted interesting stories about their past one after another. Miss Hachi, do you know? When I was in Rukongai, I watched patients die helplessly one by one, and I swore that I must become a... Before Makoto Senju could finish, Ayahakiko, who was sipping sake continuously, interrupted with a hazy look in her eyes. Dr. Kaihanshou, don't be so polite, just call me Shaoling. Kaihanshou paused, and his eyes, which seemed to be equally hazy, secretly looked at Fen Shaoling. Couldn't she be really drunk? For a moment, Kaihanshou's interest in continuing to fool around was mostly gone, and he realized that there was no point in continuing to talk. That pure wink was just for the blind. How much information could a drunk Fen Shaoling remember? It would be better to save time and do something more meaningful, such as practicing. Miss Fen, you're drunk. Kaihanshou seemed to have a big tongue and reminded her obscurely. I'm not drunk, hehe. Fen Shaoling smacked her lips and asked with a dazed look. You are the only one who is so gentle to me besides Master Yi, Dr. Kaihanshou. I am very happy today, are you, my friend? Kaihanshou heard this, but he couldn't help but feel sorry for his salary. The sting of a wasp is the most poisonous of women. If you get drunk, my salary will suffer. Senju Makoto had an inexplicable illusion that he was invited out by a wine and food agent, and then forced to spend money. But in public, Senju Makoto couldn't take the initiative to reach into the arms of the drunk Ayahakiko to grope her wallet, right? So after Senju Makoto reluctantly paid the bill, he directly supported Ayahakiko and prepared to send her back to the second squad. After all, Senju Makoto now has no independent residence, and he can't take Ayahakiko directly back to Unohana-retsu's courtyard to rest. That's really a little inappropriate and inconvenient. Although Senju Makoto is a gentleman who is not afraid of his own shadow, he is also worried that some unnecessary sheer fields will be created, and he will be stacked unintentionally. However, Senju Makoto, who had just supported Ayahakiko to the door of the barbecue restaurant, froze and stared blankly at the groups of Ioki Kyoko, Ioki Riza, the members of the 5th Rescue Team, and Unohana-retsu standing in the front with a gentle expression. Senju Makoto. Ioki Riza looked at Senju Makoto in astonishment, then looked at Ayahakiko who was half leaning on Senju Makoto, and asked. Makoto-kun, why are you here? Who is she? Ioki Kyoko looked up at the sky and asked with a puzzled tone. Makoto-kun, it seems that it is just the time for the shift change now. As for Unohana-retsu, he still seemed to be smiling and gentle, without any surprise or anger at all. Chapter 39. There's not enough in the bowl, but there's more in the pot. Cold sweat broke out on Senju Makoto's forehead almost instantly. Facing those gazes, Senju Makoto felt as if he was caught by his family, teachers, and colleagues while secretly playing with a tablet outside during work hours. Panic. Instinctively, Senju Makoto panicked. No. Why am I panicking? Senju Makoto's eyes cleared and he quickly reacted. He was a pure and innocent boy, and he didn't really do anything. He just wanted to secretly cooperate with the investigation of the second team and get along well with the future captain of the second team. In this situation, he only needed to make himself appear unaware of Ayabichat's purpose, and let Ayabichat, who pretended not to know about other purposes, be known to a group of colleagues in front of him. The final result, he was an innocent person who had no idea what was going on. Although it was a bit confusing, Senju Makoto found the breakthrough point almost instantly, and it was not difficult to implement. After all, before this, Senju Makoto's image to the outside world had always been that of a pure and gentle boy. If he had not been caught on the spot, I'm afraid no one would believe that Senju Makoto is an LS scumbag, not to mention that Senju Makoto was not one. Teacher, Ioki Riza, it's great to see you. Senju Makoto's glasses on his nose just covered up the emotional fluctuations that just flashed by, and his face showed a relieved expression, and he said. Miss B from the second team specially invited me to dinner to celebrate my first successful consultation today. I didn't expect her to be drunk. I don't know how to send her back. Second team. The words that flashed in Senju Makoto's mouth made Unohanaretsu's slightly bent eyes open a little, and his eyes carefully looked at IB. Soon, Unohanaretsu recognized IB's identity, the captain of the second team and the guard of Shifen Yuan Yorishi, the commander-in-chief of the secret mobile team. Suddenly, Unohanaretsu understood a lot of things. As the guard of Yorishi Shiuin, it is undoubtedly quite suspicious that Hoshiko appeared in the 4th Division and made friends with Makoto Senju, and even took the initiative to invite Makoto Senju to dinner. Among them, it is very likely that Yorishi Shiuin guided her. Almost in an instant, Unohanaretsu confirmed this guess. As for why this Hoshiko was so drunk that she needed Makoto Senju's support to walk, which surprised Unohanaretsu. Thinking of this, Unohanaretsu's eyes turned and looked at Makoto Senju again and asked gently, "Makoto, where are you going to send her back next? It's okay to lend the courtyard to you tonight." However, facing Unohanaretsu's gentle eyes, Makoto Senju only felt a chill on his back and his hair stood up, as if he was stared at by some kind of ferocious beast that slowly opened its eyes. Makoto Senju scratched his head, pretending that he didn't understand Unohanaretsu's obscure meaning at all, and said it purely. Teacher, I'm not very good at taking care of drunk people. I was worried about the location of the B family's house, so I wanted to take her home." "Really?" Unohanaretsu looked at Senju Makoto with a half-smile, and then turned to a female member of the 4th Division behind him and said, "Excuse me, take Miss B back to the 4th Division for a while to recuperate, and then contact Captain Shifen Yuan to pick her up." "Yes, Captain." The female member nodded, stepped forward to take Bio from Senju Makoto's hand, and went directly to the direction of the 4th Division's barracks with Bio on her back. As for Senju Makoto, after handing Bio over, his back was almost wet with cold sweat. "Unohana teacher, it's really scary." This seemingly proper and reasonable arrangement is undoubtedly a certain attitude towards Shifen Yuan Yorishi. In the future, unless it's absolutely necessary, you must not bump into Unohana teacher. Senju Makoto secretly reminded himself, but on the surface, he looked like he was doing a great favor and was ready to run away immediately. "Wait a minute, Makoto, I guess you and Miss B haven't eaten enough just now, so let's have a meal together," Unohanaretsu said. "Teacher, I'm full," Senju Makoto, who sensed something was wrong, politely refused. "No, you're not full yet," Unohanaretsu reminded him with a bit more seriousness in his tone. Senju Makoto's body stiffened, and he touched his stomach and said from the heart, "Teacher still understands me, I can really eat a little more." "Yeah." Unohanaretsu nodded with satisfaction, and then led the members of the 5th Rescue Team behind him into the barbecue restaurant. During the whole process, Senju Makoto didn't dare to say a word, and sat next to Unohanaretsu obediently according to Unohanaretsu's instructions, with an eye on the nose and nose on the heart, and completely ignored the eyes that Okiriza, who was sitting on the other side, cast from time to time. As the first batch of barbecue was cooked, Unohanaretsu almost completely pushed the 3 servings of barbecue in front of Senju Makoto, and spoke with a gentle and caring look. "Come on, eat more. The bowl is not enough. There is more in the roasting pan." Makoto Senju was about to cry without tears. "Unohana teacher, he was not hinting at me, was he?" Senju Makoto, who felt a little guilty, looked up at Unohanaretsu beside him, but saw Unohanaretsu's eyes that seemed to reveal some kind of gloom and terror. Suddenly, Makoto Senju, who was frightened, hurriedly tried to bury his head in eating and responded, "Enough, teacher, the bowl is enough." "If it's not enough, please tell me," Unohanaretsu reminded in a gentle tone. "Enough, absolutely enough," Makoto Senju responded quickly. In response, Unohanaretsu gave Makoto Senju a look and did not knock his stupid disciple again. Since he has become my Unohanaretsu's disciple, the 11th Division actually wants to pry him away from him. It's fine that Kinpachi Zaraki's simple brain circuit would have such a fantasy, but Yorishi Shiuin actually sent Hoshiko from his own guards to come in contact with Makoto Senju, and even mixed up with them and drank and got drunk. This made Unohanaretsu wonder if Makoto Senju would have sent Hoshiko back to the 2nd squad, and then Yorishi Shiuin would have been able to come into contact with Makoto Senju. Makoto is so popular. In addition to his talents in Kido and medicine, have I overlooked any other talents of his? Does he also have an extraordinary talent in Shunpo? Unohanaretsu once again looked at the innocent boy next to him who was so scared that he buried his head in his food, and a trace of doubt rose in his heart. Chapter 40. No martial ethics, all things. Then, Unohana ignored Senju Cheng and turned to ask the 5th rescue team about today's mission. At first, Senju Cheng, who was busy eating, didn't take it seriously, but when he heard the specific details of the mission, his eyes couldn't help but focus. In Rukongei, residents have been experiencing strange conditions of missing souls. This time, the deputy captain of the 10th Division, Ishin Shiba, who was in charge of patrol and security, requested that the 4th Division send the 5th rescue team to Rukongei to assist in the investigation and confirm the cause of the missing souls. Unohana, who was in charge of the 4th Division, became interested after hearing this. He took the opportunity to treat the 5th rescue team, who had been busy all day, and personally understand the specific details of the missing souls. In response to Unohana's questions, Kyoko Ioki also described the whole incident in detail. The place where the soul loss phenomenon occurred is located in a remote and extremely poor area of Rukongei, so the 10th Division, which is responsible for patrolling and guarding Rukongei, was slow to notice the occurrence of this situation, and preliminary statistics show that there are more than 100 residents who have lost part of their souls, and a considerable number of missing people are not included. Unohana frowned and asked, "It shouldn't be the so-called disease, right?" Ioki Kyoko shook her head and answered seriously. "No, I led the 5th rescue team to carefully check all the residents who were missing their souls. Although the residents who lost their souls showed irreversible loss of spirit particles, a significant decrease in lifespan, and lost some emotions, the missing soul parts were not consistent, and it should not be caused by some unknown disease." Unohana nodded and said, "In this case, there are many possibilities. It was done by a hollow with high intelligence and the ability to hide spiritual pressure, or by some strange unknown creature in Soul Society, or by the power of some zanpakutō." Hearing Unohana's last guess, the 5th rescue team present could not help but feel a little cold. No way, Captain, could there be a zanpakutō power that needs to devour souls? And how could a Shinigami do such an evil thing?" Ioki said in disbelief. "Who knows?" Unohana said without comment, and then said, "Everyone has worked hard today, please have a good rest later." "Thank you, Captain." As the banquet ended, Unohana also left with Senju Cheng, who was completely full, and went to the direction of the courtyard. "Cheng, your expression seems a little strange about the missing soul incident, do you have any thoughts?" Suddenly, Unohana asked Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng shook his head and responded, "No, this is the first time I've heard of this kind of situation, so I'm a little shocked." Unohana nodded and said, "Regarding the inspection of those soul-depleted residents, Ioki has missed one place. I plan to go and confirm it myself tomorrow. You can come with me." Senju Cheng was slightly startled, and then nodded in agreement. Or perhaps, Senju Cheng had no position to refuse, and Unohana was just notifying him. "Have a good rest, we'll set off tomorrow morning." After getting up, in the gentle farewell of Unohana, Senju Cheng returned to the room, and his eyes revealed a bit more heaviness and gloom. A small range of souls, missing. Senju Cheng is no longer a god of death who knows nothing. His mastery of medical skills makes him understand that this matter is by no means that simple. I'm afraid Unohana has also realized the problem, so he decided to go to Rukongei in person tomorrow. Normally, I have never heard of any disease that would directly cause a small range of soul loss, but if it was done by a hollow, the hollow would not only devour a part, which is completely illogical. In addition, the only two remaining guesses are some unknown creatures, or the ability of the zanpakutō. The former, this creature is undoubtedly a great hidden danger to the Soul Society. The latter, this indicates an extremely evil event. However, at this moment, Senju Cheng couldn't help but think of a person in his mind, Aizen Sasuke, and the technology is stripping the power of the god of death that he had just mentioned not long ago. Has Aizen Sasuke already conducted experiments in Rukongei? Directly using the god of death as an experimental subject is extremely easy to be detected by the Seireitei. So the target is set in Rukongei. Oh! Has Aizen Sasuke already started to manufacture the Hodyoku? For a moment, Senju Cheng couldn't help but have a strong sense of crisis and urgency, knowing that facing the big event that will soon come, his strength is far from enough to cope with it. Although, after Senju Cheng had contact with Aizen Sasuke not long ago, he chose to let Unohana reject Aizen Sasuke's subsequent contact in the name of the 4th Division, which should not cause Aizen Sasuke's hostility and suspicion, but it is hard to say whether Aizen Sasuke will casually include the innocent himself in the test subjects. If he is not careful, it will be completely over. After thinking for a moment, Senju Cheng, who looked a little gloomy, put aside all the speculations in his mind for the time being, and planned to follow Unohana teacher to Cheng-ge to confirm the situation tomorrow. Then, Senju Cheng placed his zanpakutō between his legs and began today's training. His eyes darkened. The next moment, Senju Cheng came to the familiar blue sky grassland again, and subconsciously prepared to deal with the attack. With Senju Cheng's initiative to propose the practice of bankai to Senju Cheng half a year ago, Senju Cheng became less and less martial. At the beginning, Senju Cheng was a little reluctant to hurt Senju Cheng, and then after confirming the start, Senju Cheng would happily torture Senju Cheng in various ways. Now it has developed to the point where it directly began to torture Senju Cheng with various unfounded names. For example, "What a despicable, shameless, hateful, and lecherous master, all slander." Therefore, this almost caused Senju Cheng to enter the spiritual space and was about to have a stress reaction, for fear that Senju Cheng would say something like the last time they met. Master Cheng's expression today is so lecherous, accept the punishment from heaven. However, to Senju Cheng's surprise, today Senju Cheng rarely appeared in front of him, and his expression inexplicably seemed a little sad and silent. Senju Cheng was tense all over and asked vigilantly, "Senju Cheng, what's wrong with you?" Master Cheng, Senju Cheng floated directly in front of Senju Cheng, and asked with concern in his eyes. This question should be asked by the Lun family to Master Cheng. Chapter 41 True Power. Me? Senju Cheng looked at Senju Cheng in confusion, hesitation and worry. Senju Cheng touched Senju Cheng's face with one hand and spoke. "What exactly is the Master Cheng worried about?" Senju Cheng was slightly startled. He didn't expect that such words could come from the mouth of Senju Cheng, who was always making trouble. However, despite this, Senju Cheng still instinctively did not relax his vigilance against Senju Cheng, as if it was a replica of his own personality in some aspects, and Senju Cheng also completely inherited the characteristics of being inconsistent inside and outside. "Nothing, just a little thing in the outside world," Senju Cheng replied. "Really? But the whole world has fallen into autumn," with the hesitation and worry of the Master Cheng, "which really makes the Lun family embarrassed," Senju Cheng said. Upon hearing this, Senju Cheng's eyes swept around in the spiritual space, and he suddenly found that he occasionally saw a yellow tip on the originally green grass. Senju Cheng thought for a while, raised his eyebrows, and unconsciously revealed the expression of a goldfish man who was about to catch goldfish on his face. "Since Senju Cheng wants to share the worries for me, my master, that's not impossible, eh?" The palm-sized Senju Cheng said, holding a finger. "Master Cheng, taboos are not allowed. In a sense, Lunjia can be regarded as another you." Senju Cheng. "What is a taboo? Please make it clear. What's more, wouldn't the other self seem to have no sense of guilt? You still need to worry about whether you should be responsible for other creatures, but for yourself, you don't need to consider it at all." "No, I'm not a pervert, how could I do anything to Senju Cheng?" Thinking of this, Senju Cheng's expression darkened slightly, but he still spoke as gently as possible. "It's the name. Senju Cheng, how about telling the master the name of your bankai?" All the master's hesitation and worries are due to the lack of firepower and strength. As long as you know the name of the bankai, then the troubles will naturally be reduced a lot at the end. Senju Cheng inexplicably had a strange feeling, as if he was coaxing some innocent little lily to do something that he shouldn't do. People can't, at least they shouldn't. "Oh? I've been dead for a long time, and now I'm the god of death, so it shouldn't be a big problem, not to mention that I'm lying to myself." Lying to yourself isn't something immoral and taboo, right? Thinking of this, Senju Cheng looked at Senju Cheng with more sincerity, staring at Senju Cheng's little mouth, hoping that she could spit out something useful. Senju Cheng's expression first showed hesitation, and then under Senju Cheng's gaze, it became entangled and hesitant. Could it be that it is really possible to capture zanpakutō in this way, so that it surrenders and meets the conditions for the release of bankai? Although Senju Cheng always felt that his way of opening was a little wrong, he looked at Senju Cheng with more and more expectation. However, the next moment, Senju Cheng crossed his hands in front of his chest to form an X and answered sweetly. "Da-me, oh da-me, da-me, Master Cheng, Lunjia is not the kind of little sweet girl who falls directly without a real strategy. If you want to know everything about Lungjie, you must rely on your strength to make Lungjie surrender completely. Senju Cheng's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Obviously, he could directly refuse and refute, but he gave a little hope and hesitated for a long time. In the end, even the words of refusal were said very beautifully. This kind of bad behavior and reaction tasted quite good. That's right, Senju Cheng is full of my taste. It is definitely a zanpakutō separated from my soul. For the first time, Senju Cheng felt that it would be better for him to be a little pure, so as not to teach his zanpakutō bad things. Is there no room for negotiation? For example, tell me part of your name first. Don't worry, you know me well, I'll keep my promise. Senju Cheng said solemnly. I'm definitely just robbing a little outside of Bankai to borrow a little power. I won't dream of getting the power of Bankai all at once. I will slowly conquer you until you surrender. Senju Cheng blinked his big eyes like Caroline, then smiled and answered sweetly. No, Master Cheng, if you do this, Master Cheng will definitely get the wrong Bankai and there will be no way to turn back completely. Wrong Bankai? Senju Cheng looked at Senju Cheng with some surprise. I feel that it is quite wrong to look at your image of Seireitei now. It shouldn't be, however. Senju Cheng's expression gradually became serious and he spoke. Master Cheng, before you realize the real power, you will never be able to successfully Bankai, and the Rin family will never surrender to you. Senju Cheng's heart moved and asked. What is real power? Senju Cheng smiled lightly, opened his mouth slightly and said. Actually, the Lun family has told Master Cheng countless times, but Master Cheng has always ignored the Lun family's hints, or Master Cheng has always pretended not to hear it. However, the last voice that reached Senju Cheng's ears became softer and softer, until Senju Cheng seemed to be unable to hear clearly. For a moment, Senju Cheng's face was full of confusion, and he had no idea what useful information Senju Cheng had told him. Since Senju Cheng heard the name of zanpakutō Seireitei about 2 years ago and successfully Seireitei, Senju Cheng has not taught him any specific moves or powers. He can only understand and use similar forms of power based on his previous life. Even the development of Seed of the Forest was completely developed by Senju Cheng himself, who spent a year trying to make up for his own shortcomings of insufficient spiritual power and spiritual pressure. Apart from that, most of the communication between Senju Cheng and Senju Cheng seems to have no practical significance. They just keep calling each other Master Source, and then constantly tease or torture Senju Cheng in battle. At this moment, Senju Cheng, the drama queen, once again made a crazy and aggrieved voice. Ha ha ha, the despicable and vulgar Master Source must be thinking about something bad again. The next moment, countless giant trees broke out of the ground in the endless grassland and turned into a monstrous sea of trees, rolling towards Senju Cheng, with the momentum to crush Senju Cheng into Source again. Senju Cheng, you, Senju Cheng gritted his teeth and shouted, and then was instantly crushed by the sea of trees composed of countless trees like giant dragons. Source Chapter 42 The Origin of zanpakutō. The next morning, as Senju Cheng slowly opened his eyes revealed a yearning for life and peace, and a few traces of fatigue that he could not bear. Really, I can't move anymore, my spirit is completely exhausted. 1 night, 9 times. Last night, Senju Cheng seemed to be completely crazy, and it made Senju Cheng become a 9-time source in just 1 night. If this trend continues, Senju Cheng will probably become a terrifying and pure source squeezing princess. It's just that Senju Cheng usually needs to hide his strength, so he can only accumulate combat experience and familiarize himself with Senju Cheng's abilities in this way, and try to slowly conquer Senju Cheng to make it surrender, and further master the Bankai of zanpakutō. But although Senju Cheng also understands that for most captain-level Shinigami, it often takes decades or even hundreds of years for them to master the ability of zanpakutō's Bankai, so as to slowly make zanpakutō surrender completely. Except for a very small number of geniuses or hangers-on, under normal circumstances, there are few Shinigami who can master Bankai in a very short time within a few years. But, is this amazing frequency and combat capability of Senju Cheng really reasonable? And it seems that there is no possibility of using hard power to make Senju Cheng surrender. A trace of doubt flashed through Senju Cheng's mind. And Senju Cheng's real power also made Senju Cheng a little concerned. This sounded like Senju Cheng seemed to have some fundamental misunderstanding of Senju Cheng. Could it be that the interpretation of the name Senluang was wrong? Senluang. It can't be Shen Luo on Xiang, right? I hate this kind of guy who speaks half-heartedly, just like I hate novel authors who like to break chapters. They should all be pulled out and buried directly in the ground, Senju Cheng couldn't help but mutter, and then slapped his zanpakutō Senluang a few times, as if to vent out the powerlessness and frustration he felt 9 times last night. Immediately, Senju Cheng got up and stretched his body, opened the door and walked towards the place where he usually had breakfast. Just as he walked out of a corner, he saw Unohana and Shibuya Yorishi talking about something from a distance, and Ayahosha was also following Shibuya Yorishi with her head down. Although the atmosphere between Unohana and Shibuya Yorishi seemed to be quite harmonious and friendly, both of them also had smiling expressions, and from time to time, there were hearty laughter floating into Senju Cheng's ears. However, Senju Cheng inexplicably felt that it would be a very good choice for him not to get close to her at this moment. Shibuya Yorishi, this woman is not comparable to Ayahosha, who is still at the peak of her half-lost period. Stay away, Senju Cheng shrank his head from the corner and simply stuck to the wall without showing his head until the sound of the conversation between the two parties completely disappeared. Senju Cheng then pretended to be nothing and walked out. Unohana looked at Senju Cheng who appeared, and seemed to have no intention of telling him the content of the conversation, and said directly, "Are you up? Then let's go." "Yes, teacher." Senju Cheng responded, and Unohana pulled out a section of the zanpakutō in his hand, and then the zanpakutō blade directly turned into a huge green one-eyed ray floating in the air, Nishijaku. "No release what? Directly perform the Shikai release." Senju Cheng, who was able to squeeze the source girls in Senluang to death last night, saw this scene, and a look of envy flashed in his eyes. After all, only the god of death who mastered the zanpakutō Bankai can directly emit the release words and directly perform the Shikai of the zanpakutō. When the day comes that you completely surrender, Senluang, you will know that you were wrong. Senju Cheng said secretly, and then followed Unohana and jumped directly onto the back of Nishijaku. Nishijaku also flew towards the direction of the wide gate of the west gate of the Seireitei according to Unohana's order. Although captain-level Shinigami can enter and exit the Seireitei without restriction, since the entire Seireitei is covered with a protective shield called the soul-blocking membrane, normal entry and exit of the Seireitei can only be through the 4 gates in the southeast, northwest, and needs to be confirmed and recorded by the gate guards. This is also the first time that Senju Cheng has left the Seireitei since joining the GOTY 13. Witnessing the entire passage, Senju Cheng feels that this is still quite rigorous. At least to a certain extent, it can prevent the Shinigami who hold power from entering Rukongei at will, resulting in the Shinigami being able to maliciously kill the residents of Rukongei without any worries. As he left the Seireitei area, large areas of Rukongei appeared in the eyes of Senju Cheng, who was flying in the air on the Nishijaku. Dilapidated, chaotic, and lifeless, the first few Rukongei areas near the Seireitei were not bad, but as they continued to move away from the Seireitei, the scene of Rukongei became more and more unbearable, as if it was completely different from the Seireitei standing in the center of Soul Society. Although Makoto Senju was born in Rukongei, he still felt shocked when he looked down at Rukongei from mid-air. At this moment, a beautiful lunchbox was handed to Makoto Senju, which contained a rice ball that looked quite exquisite. Then, Unohana's gentle voice rang beside Makoto Senju. "Makoto, you haven't had breakfast yet, right? Eat something. It may be a busy day today." "Thank you, teacher." Makoto Senju came to his senses and suppressed the strangeness in his heart, and quickly took the rice ball and ate it. It must be said that although Makoto Senju felt that it was quite relaxing to get along with simple girls like Ayahakiko and Rizuoki, and he didn't need to worry about any calculations, the meticulous care from the perfect and gentle queen like Unohana is also, it smells so good. Makoto Senju bit the rice ball and asked after sighing sincerely. "Teacher, what did the Yoki 5 miss yesterday? Do you need to confirm it yourself?" Unohana, who was kneeling gracefully on the back of Nishijaku, stated softly. The Yoki 5's judgment is that the degree of soul loss of those residents is inconsistent, but there is probably a common point hidden in them, that is, the missing soul parts contain strong emotions, which leads to the considerable emotional loss of those residents. "Emotion, lab?" Senju Makoto asked. Unohana turned his head and looked at Senju Makoto, and asked softly. Makao, where do you think the power, thoughts and personality of the zanpakutō itself come from? Senju Makao narrowed his eyes and answered. The god of death, itself. Chapter 43 The relationship between death and zanpakutō. That's right, Unohana Retsu nodded, then elegantly stretched out his hand to smooth his hair and stated. Zanpakutō is a very complex yet simple thing. It is born in the souls of the Shinigami. It is the embodiment and conceptualization of the power of the Shinigami in the true sense. Generally speaking, the power representing zanpakutō is born accordingly when each Shinigami is born. So similar to a considerable number of great nobles in the Seireitei, the blood-related members have similar zanpakutō abilities. This is due to the characteristics of their own spirits. However, even between the closest relatives, father and son or brother and brother, there'll never be an absolutely identical zanpakutō. Do you know why? Senju Makao shook his head and looked at Unohana Retsu with pure and curious eyes, waiting for Unohana Retsu to continue. A disciple should behave like a disciple. At this time, pretending to be cool and making random guesses will only affect Unohana-sama's performance. As a disciple who respects his teacher, Senju Makao only needs to shout 666 secretly, and encourage Unohana-sama with the most full-fledged attitude of curiosity, so that Unohana-sama can say as much as possible. Unohana Retsu seemed to be completely unconcerned about this knowledge that was considered a secret in the Seireitei, and continued to state it softly. Because, in addition to the characteristics and power of the spirit itself that will affect the formation of the zanpakutō, the will, thinking, emotions, etc. of the god of death itself will also cause various subtle changes in the zanpakutō, and even this change includes the ability of the zanpakutō Shikai and Bankai. Senju Makao nodded repeatedly. In a sense, this statement coincides with Senju Makao's previous guess. For example, Iohakiko's Sparrow-B Thunder Whip should be a cross-class ability Bankai formed by the wrong development route after being ruthlessly abandoned by Orishi Shiuin. In the Shikai stage, Iohakiko was just a blade hidden in the dark by Orishi Shiuin, so she had a two-hit kill ability similar to that passed down from generation to generation in the B family. But after being ruthlessly abandoned, Iohakiko's emotions became twisted. In addition, Iohakiko needed to become the captain of the 2nd Division and stand in the open, so her Bankai became Sparrow-B Thunder Whip, an alternative one-hit kill zanpakutō with some inconsistent abilities. In addition, the most obvious one is Unohana Retsu beside him, right? Shikai is a purely harmless flying biological device plus a healing pack, and Bankai seems to have completely mutated into some kind of pure killing ability, which is completely different from the relationship between Shikai and Bankai of other normal zanpakutō. So, what's the matter with my zanpakutō that is full of thoughts about killing its owner? Senju Makao's mouth twitched, and he inexplicably hit some not-so-good guesses. What wrong, Bankai? I'm standing on a fork in the road. Synraman is full of killing, while I am full of healing and pureness, so there is a conflict, right? That's not right. My true inner thoughts don't seem to be that healing and pure, so, it's the opposite. Senju Makao blinked his eyes, always feeling that this kind of thing is indeed a bit complicated. But Synraman seems to be much simpler than Kuroseki Ichiko's own zanpakutō, which was hybridized in the relationship of a triangle race and is extremely complicated. After all, I should still be quite pure. It's just that the soul has traveled through time and space. There are no miscellaneous things that have penetrated into the body and made into a strange existence. Different races are, what? No. Senju Makao patted his head, always feeling that he had been with Synraman for too long and inexplicably learned some strange words. Unohana Retsu looked at Senju Makao's actions and couldn't help asking. Are there any doubts? Senju Makao asked, as if he had thought of something. Teacher, what if there are two identical zanpakutō? Unohana Retsu pondered for a moment, and did not subconsciously reject Senju Makao's wild idea. He seemed to be thinking about something and said, in the history of Soul Society that I know of, this situation has not yet occurred. The reason for the existence of the only two double-bladed zanpakutō is also very special. But if you want to express that two identical zanpakutō appear in the hands of different Shinigami, after a pause, Unohana Retsu looked at Senju Makao and said, either one party stole or copied that power of the zanpakutō of the other Shinigami. Or, it is possible to copy the Shinigami itself through some taboo experiment. Therefore, this is also the reason why Soul Society does not allow two identical zanpakutō to appear. I see. As a disciple, Senju Makao showed a look of sudden enlightenment, which made Unohana Retsu unconsciously feel a sense of accomplishment in successfully cultivating Then, Senju Cheng seemed to have thought of something and asked. Teacher, so you suspect that the missing souls of those residents contain the power of zanpakutō? Unohana narrowed his eyes slightly and answered. It is possible. Shmachi is not a necessary condition for awakening zanpakutō, so it is not absolutely impossible that the residents of Cheng-ge do not have zanpakutō that represents the power of the god of death. If all the residents who have lost their souls have lost a lot of emotions, then it is very likely that someone is secretly trying to deprive a lot of the power of the god of death. This will be a vicious incident that cannot be ignored. Senju Cheng blinked his eyes, listening to Unohana's suspicion and speculation, and his determination to hug the beautiful legs became more and more firm. Just from some trivial information, Unohana has deduced so much information. It can only be said that he is worthy of being the only strong man in the entire Seireitei who has seen through the mirror flower and walked a moon completely with details and wisdom. As the saying goes, a woman who is 3 years older than her husband is rich in gold bricks. Unohana-sama has been older for thousands of years. Isn't that a great treasure that can be developed endlessly? But at this moment, Makoto Senju, who had finished eating the rice ball, burped inadvertently. Are you full? Yes, thank you, teacher. This rice ball is very soft and fragrant. Makoto Senju praised sincerely. Unohana smiled gently, took the lunchbox from Makoto Senju, and threw it into the mouth of Nishizaku. Nishizaku also swallowed the lunchbox naturally. In an instant, Makoto Senju's expression changed. Before, wouldn't Unohana also take the lunchbox out of Nishizaku's stomach in this way when he was not paying attention? Right. Insulation effect plus 11,111, appetite effect minus 99,999. For a moment, Makoto Senju felt that Unohana's rice ball was indeed not so easy to swallow. Chapter 44 Let's fight. Then, in the midst of the earthquake in Senju Makoto's pupils, Nishizaku, who had swallowed the lunchbox, spit out 2 small bottles to Unohana, who then caught them in his hands. Finished. Unohana teacher actually developed such a strange use for her zanpakutō. Is she treating Nishizaku as some kind of portable storage device for her flesh? In short, meat faces, beep. In the future, Unohana teacher will not secretly develop some strange things on me, right? Senju Makoto swallowed his saliva subconsciously, always feeling that Unohana, who looked gentle and kind at the moment, was emitting some dark energy invisibly, quietly moved his knees a little bit, and instinctively made himself stay away from Unohana. Sure enough, compared to the mature and caring mature sister, it is more comfortable to get along with the simple and cute Hakiko and Rizaoki. Even if they're a little bit arrogant, it is not intolerable. Makoto, are you staying away from me, or are you disgusted with Nishizaku? At this moment, Unohana's seemingly gentle and calm voice suddenly sounded, causing Senju Makoto's heart to tremble inexplicably. Senju Makoto said with a stiff smile. No, how could that be? I like Unohana teacher the most, but the wind was strong just now, and it blew me a little off my original position. Unohana looked at him and said. Really? Your smile is also a little stiff. It's also because of the strong wind. It's my first time to go up to the sky with the teacher, so I'm not used to it. Senju Makoto said with a stiff face. I see, Unohana said with a smile, then stretched out his hand to pull Senju Makoto behind him, letting himself block in front, and said. But it doesn't matter, the teacher can still block the wind for you a little bit now. Thank you, teacher. Senju Makoto responded with a twitch in the corner of his eyes. I can't help it. You are my disciple now. I can't just watch you fall off Nishizaku and die, can I? Unohana's voice seemed to sound a little erratic, causing Senju Makoto's eyes to widen a little. This is a threat, right? This is definitely a threat to his own disciple, right? Dare to dislike and die. Senju Makoto hesitated for a moment, thought of something, and said with a stiff upper lip. Thank you, teacher. Besides, Nishizaku is pretty cute. Really? I also think Nishizaku is pretty cute. I thought I was the only one who thought Nishizaku was a perfect creature that met the aesthetic standards. I didn't expect you to think so too. The teacher is very satisfied. As Senju Makoto heard Unohana's voice return to its usual gentleness, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. He almost bumped into the taboo that Unohana teacher could not violate. Yes, I was really confused. In a sense, zanpakutō can perfectly reflect the true inner existence of the god of death. Nishizaku's posture is undoubtedly a subtle proof of Unohana's unique aesthetics. Nishizaku is a flat, huge, green, single-eyed ray that is really ugly, but under the influence of the teacher, Senju Cheng will gradually find that it has a unique ugly and cute beauty. No. After returning, I immediately made 2 large posters of Nishizaku and hung them in the room, fully demonstrating my absolute support for the teacher's aesthetics as a disciple. Just as Senju Cheng was thinking about the production of the poster, a bottle that had just been spit out of Nishizaku's mouth was placed in Senju Cheng's hand by Unohana. "Teacher, what is this?" Senju Cheng shook the bottle and looked at the white unknown viscous liquid in the bottle, a little confused. "I made this overnight last night. Time is limited, so there are only 2 bottles. 1 bottle is for you to use." Unohana replied. "Teacher, how do I use it?" Although Senju Cheng felt that this unknown sticky white liquid was a little strange, he still asked with gritted teeth. "Well, in order to help you understand quickly, just use it on me," Unohana said as he turned around, opened the bottle cap in Senju Cheng's hand, and put a finger in. The next moment, as Unohana finger touched the white liquid, the sticky liquid quickly turned green, almost centered on Unohana finger. Senju Cheng blinked and answered truthfully like an innocent boy. "Teacher, this is green," Unohana nodded and said without surprise. "This is a normal phenomenon. The liquid in the bottle can detect the richness of the spirit's emotions. Different colors represent different degrees. The darker the color, the stronger the spirit's emotions at the moment." After a pause, Unohana glanced at Senju Cheng and said, "Also, your statement could be a little less weird." "Yes, teacher." Senju Cheng shrank his head. Just now, he had never expected that Unohana, who was proficient in Kido and medical skills, could actually develop something with such a strange purpose, so he blurted it out subconsciously. "So, I will use this liquid to examine those residents of Rukongei, and just ask them to stretch out their fingers. If the color is not green, it means that there are a lot of emotions in their souls that have been forcibly taken away. That's not the case. Some spirits usually maintain a relatively weak emotional state. It is best to stimulate them as much as possible, which will be more accurate." Unohana thought for a while and added, "How do you need to stimulate?" Senju Cheng asked. "Verbal stimulation, behavioral stimulation, smell stimulation, etc. Anything that can cause emotional fluctuations will do." After a pause, Unohana seemed to have thought of something and said, "There is still time now. You can also try to stimulate me, so as to obtain a normal reference value for comparison." Senju Cheng heard this, hesitated for a moment, and spoke. "Teacher, you are so beautiful." However, as soon as Senju Cheng finished speaking, the light green in the bottle hardly changed at all. Then, Senju Cheng changed his style and praised Unohana from different angles, but except for a slight change when praising Nishizaku, there was almost no reaction. At this moment, Senju Cheng understood that as the 1,000-year-old god of death, Unohana teacher had no idea how many vice captains he had changed. It seemed that these simple tricks had long been unable to cause Unohana teacher's reaction. Then, Senju Cheng hesitantly pushed his glasses, glanced at Unohana, who was still gentle and kind on the surface, and said softly, "Teacher, let's fight." In an instant, as the voice fell, Unohana's gentle expression collapsed directly, and Senju Cheng felt that everything he saw was completely covered by the terrifying blood-colored spiritual pressure. The liquid in the bottle was even more black and shining. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 45 of Nsa. Killing Intent. The killing intent that was almost materialized and pure, the killing intent that was pure just for killing, rushed straight into Senju Cheng's mind, causing Senju Cheng's consciousness to almost fall into a moment of blankness, and then, as if some instinct was stimulated and awakened, bloodshot began to appear around Senju Cheng's eyeballs. But it was only for a moment, and that instinct was forcibly suppressed by Senju Cheng, and he spoke with a panicked tone. "Old teacher, what's wrong with you?" After being interrupted by Senju Cheng, Unohana, who had a stress reaction, also came back to his senses. His expression that was close to collapse quickly recovered, and the blood-colored spiritual pressure that permeated also dissipated directly, as if everything just now was just an illusion. RDADA, Makao, I'm sorry, I remembered some not so nice past events. Senju Makao breathed a sigh of relief and said, Teacher, I was scared to death. I just had the illusion that you caught me. It's not completely an illusion, Unohana said with a smile, which made Senju Makao's heart tighten. Makao, how could you think of fighting with me? It was really beyond the teacher's expectation to stimulate the teacher like this. Because, Senju Makao scratched his head, looking like a sunny boy, and said a little at a loss. This is the most offensive thing I can think of. Drawing the sword against the teacher you admire the most will probably disappoint the teacher who has been so kind to me, and thus cause a violent emotional fluctuation, right? I see, Unohana raised his hand and touched Senju Makao's head, saying gently. Makao, don't worry, the teacher believes that you will become a great disciple, so even if you offend the teacher occasionally, the teacher will not blame you. Offend? Teacher, do you understand the same meaning as me? Senju Makao lowered his head quickly. Although he understood that Unohana was probably referring to a fight, Senju Makao felt that if this topic continued like this, something would not be right. He was afraid that he would become a traitor who was despised by everyone. Unohana continued to gently rub Senju Makao's hair, then turned around and faced his back to Senju Makao again. Senju Makao saw this and relaxed. His eyes could not help but fall on the seemingly defenseless back of Unohana in front of him. He could even clearly see the snow-white and delicate skin on Unohana's neck. If he slashed with a knife, blood would probably spray for a long time, right? Then, Senju Makao pushed his glasses and couldn't help licking his lips, recalling the feeling of walking back and forth on the edge of life and death just now. Just now, that moment was really exciting. If I hesitated a little longer and didn't remind Unohana-sensei, I'm afraid Unohana-sensei would have instinctively attacked me, although in the spiritual space, Senju Makao was slaughtered countless times by Shinigami, and frantically played Thomas' turn on the edge of life and death. But in reality, this feeling is undoubtedly much stronger than in the spiritual space, so strong that Senju Makao almost couldn't contain his body's instinctive impulse. Thinking of this, Senju Makao couldn't help but speed up his heartbeat a little, and his whole body hit some reactions. Hard. The palm holding the zanpakutō hardened. No, not right. The next moment, Senju Makao's eyes condensed, and he instantly realized that his state seemed to be a little bit wrong, and his desire for battle seemed to have increased a lot. Was he affected by the killing intent that Unohana-sensei had just burst out? Or did he unconsciously form some instincts in the long-term Bankai trial with Shinigami? Thinking of this, Senju Makao took a deep breath and tried to put his finger into the sticky liquid in the bottle that had turned back to white. A little red, almost in the blink of an eye, it completely spread out in the bottle, as if the bottle contained the most viscous blood plasma. Sure enough, something is not right, my mental state. Senju Makao quickly stretched out his finger, and then covered the bottle again, with a trace of thought in his eyes behind his glasses. Could it be that Unohana drugged me? This time, Unohana brought me out not to investigate the loss of souls, but to implement some kind of workplace bullying on me? However, almost in a moment, Senju Makao denied this outrageous speculation and refocused his suspicion on the zanpakutō. At this moment, Senju Makao couldn't help but doubt the purpose of Shinigami's continuous battle with him every night. The zanpakutō is born with the formation of the soul, and the subsequent will, emotion, and thinking of the soul will have various effects on the final formation and power of the zanpakutō. Then why did Shinigami mention wrong Bankai and real power? Senju Makao narrowed his eyes, recalling the details of the communication and battle with Shinigami in the spiritual space last night, and combined with the information revealed by Unohana, he thought carefully. Zanpakutō has its own unique thinking and emotions, just like the Zanpakutō Zanjitsu in the hands of Kuroseki Ichigo in the future, who resisted teaching Kuroseki Ichigo that final Getsuga Tensho because it conflicted with Zanjitsu's own desire to protect Kuroseki Ichigo. In other words, there must be something wrong with me now, so Shinigami believes that the Bankai I've formed in this state will be wrong, and thus has a rejection mentality. Then, what is the real power? Shinigami said it mentioned it countless times, and asked if I was deliberately ignoring it, but it clearly never said it, and even when Shinigami fought me, it used the ability to drive countless trees. Is it wrong to understand? If Shinigami really has any strange behavior, it's only crazy fighting and the name that makes people complain. Thinking of the last, Senju Makao just couldn't help but sneer. His expression paused slightly, and he murmured, "Fight? Source. Could it be, this is what Shinraman has always wanted to tell me? At this time, Yuna Hanaretsu's voice sounded, and the flight altitude of Nishizuku was also rapidly decreasing. Makoto, we're here. Senju Makoto came to his senses and stretched his head slightly to look down. What he saw was a dilapidated house, and there were already 3/10 squad death gods wearing Shinigami suits waiting below. As Senju Makoto followed Yuna Hanaretsu to the ground, a smell that seemed to be mixed with the smell of corruption and herbs floated into Senju Makoto's nose. Chapter 46 Ichimura Jin. Captain Yuna, thank you for coming here in person. Vice Captain Shiba has returned to Seireitei for official business, so I can only introduce the situation to you. The Shinigami with the logo of the 3rd seat of the 10th Division on his armband hurriedly stepped forward and said respectfully to Yuna Hanaretsu. Thank you for your trouble. Yuna Hanaretsu said gently as always. Yes. The 3rd seat of the 10th Division responded respectfully, leading Yuna Hanaretsu and Senju Makoto forward, pointing to the houses on both sides and said, after further investigation yesterday, the number of residents who have been confirmed to be missing souls is 168, and a small number of them are in a coma. Although the colleagues of the 5th Rescue Team treated those residents yesterday, the condition of those residents is still quite bad, and the spirit particles have been continuously lost. Yuna Hanaretsu nodded and asked, have you found any traces of hollow activity? Vice Captain Shiba personally led the team to search for 2 days, but no hollows that might be lurking were found. Vice Captain Shiba speculated that the hollows might have escaped from this area. The 3rd seat of the 10th Division answered. Obviously, in order to avoid unnecessary panic, the Vice Captain of the 10th Division, Shiba Ishin, had some doubts and personally requested the 4th Division to support and confirm the condition of the residents, but on the surface, the emergence of this phenomenon was still attributed to the attack of hollows. Have all the residents who were missing souls been gathered here? Yuna Hanaretsu asked. Yes. According to Captain Shiba's order, we have concentrated all the residents who were missing souls that we have found here, but the specific arrangements for the follow-up still need the final order from the Seireitei. The 3rd seat of the 10th Division asked respectfully. Okay, then I will confirm the condition of the patient first. Yuna Hanaretsu nodded, then sent away the 3/10th Division Shinigami who led the way, and then said to Senju Makoto. Cheng, let's check the emotional deficiency of those residents separately. Senju Cheng nodded, and just as he was about to start the task quickly, Yuna Hanaretsu's voice sounded again. Cheng, the nature of the world is sometimes cruel. Don't waver in your heart. Just do what you can. Senju Cheng was slightly startled, smiled gently and innocently, nodded and left. As Senju Cheng pushed open the door of the first simple house, 6 residents were lying densely in the narrow space, both men and women, and all of them were pale and numb. And the spirit particles in their bodies are disappearing. Although Senju Cheng had expected this state, he still felt a little distressed when he saw it with his own eyes. He understood why Yuna Hana teacher had just reminded him once. In the Soul Society, souls are the basis of everything, and spirit particles are the basic substances that make up all things. The so-called body is the spirit particle constructed naturally according to the soul. Now, these residents are seriously lacking in souls, which is equivalent to losing part of the basis for their bodies, causing irreversible loss of soul particles. This is just like normal humans losing certain organs and limbs. If these residents do not lose a lot of souls, they can still live normally. But when the degree of soul loss is too high, it is like a human losing 2 kidneys. Although they did not die on the spot, they can only wait for death. Hello, I am Senju Makoto, a member of the 4th Division, who is here to check your body. Senju Makoto spoke gently and politely, but the 6 residents in front of him almost did not react at all, and still looked at Senju Makoto with numb expressions. Senju Makoto took a deep breath and began to check the 6 residents in front of him. The basic emergency treatment was obviously carried out by the 5th Rescue Team yesterday. Afterwards, Senju Makoto began to try to test the emotional activity of these residents, but almost all of them were orange close to white. So low. Senju Makoto was slightly shocked, and then tried to use words to stimulate these 6 residents cruelly, telling them that they would not live long. The color fluctuated, but it was still orange. Finally, Senju Makoto took the initiative to use Kido to replenish a resident's lost spirit particles in a way that only treated the symptoms but not the root cause. After his physical condition recovered a lot, he tested him again. It was still orange. Afterwards, Senju Makoto kept going in and out of the houses where the residents were housed, testing the residents in the same way. Almost 90% of them were orange close to white, and a few residents reported that the color was slightly darker. It seems that there is really a problem. The soul that only lacks the emotional part does not conform to the normal habit of the hollow-to-diva souls. So, it is really Aizen Sosik. Although Senju Makotao has no substantial evidence to point to Aizen Sosik, Senju Makotao understands that if the total pot of Soul Society is 1 stone in the past and 100 years in the future, Aizen Sosik can occupy at least 8 buckets, the nobles will share 1 bucket, and the rest of the Shinigami will share 1 bucket except for the innocent and pure Senju Makotao. While Senju Makotao was thinking, he suddenly felt a petite body bumping into him, and Senju Makotao subconsciously reached out to grab the petite body. Senju Makotao looked down and saw a little girl with a rare light purple color close to white, wearing a simple linen dress but unable to hide her snow-white skin. Where did this little Lolita come from? When Senju Makotao subconsciously had this thought, he felt that he could actually have the good luck to bump into a little Lolita on the street. When the little girl raised her head, Senju Makotao's expression froze. Ichimura Jin. A little boy. Although he was still a little boy who was light and soft and easy to push down, he had a pair of eyes that were slightly narrowed like a venomous snake, making it difficult to tell whether he was happy or angry. Although his face seemed to have a smile, it still gave people a sense of distance and danger. Just when Senju Makotao was slightly stunned, Ichimura Jin suddenly pulled away from Senju Makotao's palm, and then hurriedly ran in one direction. Makotao Senju turned his head to look in the direction of Jin Ichimura, and the thing that Jin Ichimura had just held in his arms flashed through his mind. If Makotao Senju remembered correctly, it should be the dry food of the Gotti 13th Division. Behind Makotao Senju, a member of the 10th Division ran over and shouted angrily in the direction of Jin Ichimura. "Damn kid, you come to steal dry food again, do you really think that the god of death won't be angry? If I really catch you, I will definitely hang you up and bounce you, beep beep, 100 times. Makotao Senju. How can you say such cruel words? How much hatred and resentment do you have? Chapter 47 Soul Transplantation. Whose general is this? He is so brave. Aren't you afraid that after Ichimura Jin becomes the captain, he will hang you upside down and play, beep beep, on you? Oh. Shiba Ishin, that's fine. Senju Makotao's memory of his previous life vaguely remembered that Shiba Ishin was originally a guy with little moral integrity. It seems reasonable that his generals inherited this style, just like the gentle disciple of Unohana-sama, Senju Makotao. He is also a very gentle boy. Fortunately, this colleague did not call out his name, and I'm afraid that Ichimura Jin probably couldn't remember him. Remember, kid, your god of death is Yoshigami Tamiya, the 19th seat of the 10th Division. If you dare to come again next time, I will never forgive you again. Under Senju Makotao's somewhat stunned eyes, Yoshigami Tamiya almost reported his division name, seat order and name without hesitation, and he almost said out the tombstone inscription directly. Yoshigami Tamiya slowly stopped beside Senju Makotao, and did not intend to continue chasing. Instead, she looked at Senju Makotao and said, "Are you, from the 4th Division?" Senju Makotao gave Yoshigami Tamiya a thumbs up without hesitation, and exclaimed, "Your Excellency was really heroic just now. I admire you." "Aha, you flatter me, Yoshigami Tamiya grinned and said. "I'm sorry, that kid didn't bump into you just now, did he? That kid is a habitual thief with spiritual power, probably because he was hungry, so he ran around." Hearing this sentence that seemed to be defending Ichimura Jin, Senju Makotao's eyes flashed with surprise. This guy who seemed to have no moral integrity seemed to be far from chasing Ichimura Jin, the thief, as he seemed to be, but instead seemed to be running after him to prevent him from taking revenge on Ichimura Jin. After all, although the Seireitei has a clear rule that Shinigami cannot kill Soul Society residents at will, for powerful Shinigami, there are countless ways to take revenge on an ordinary Rukongei resident. So, when he just reported the squad name to Jin Ichimura, he was also indirectly telling himself to protect Jin Ichimura from revenge. Thinking of this, Senju Makotao deliberately said with a gloomy look on his face. Indeed, that brat is really bad. He didn't even apologize after hitting someone. Yoshigami Tamiya put his arm around Senju Makotao's shoulders and said cheerfully, "Aha, don't worry too much. There are many such rude brats in Rukongei. You look like a new member who has just joined the Gotti 13. What's your name? I'll show you some new tricks. I'm Senju Makotao." Senju Makotao responded. Oh, it's Makao. Let me tell you, just as Yoshigami Tamade was subconsciously preparing to preach in the tone of a senior, she suddenly thought of something, her movements suddenly froze, and she looked at the smiling Senju Makao with a dull look, and subconsciously said, "You are the disciple of Captain Unohana in the rumors, the Senju Makao who joined the gynecology department that countless male Shinigami dream of entering." Senju Makao. Why do you specifically add the two words gynecology department? Ah. What else is countless male Shinigami dream of entering? My reputation in the Seireitei has been completely ruined. Senju Makao's autism. Actually, I said I was forced to join the gynecology department, do you believe it? Senju Makao asked with a twitching expression, as if to heal his name. Ah, Yoshigami Tamade said with an expression of looking at Versailles. Do you need to force a man to do something like this? How can a man be willing to do something without being forced? Makao Senju paused and decisively interrupted the topic to avoid being completely led astray by the shameless guy in front of him, and asked instead. When will your Vice Captain Shiba come back? What does Makao-kun want to talk to the Vice Captain about? Yoshigami Tamade asked, staring at Makao Senju with a look of, "Are you going to complain about me?" Makao Senju recalled the numb faces he had just seen, and as a doctor, his professional instinct made him feel a little bit of pity in his heart. He sighed and asked. No, I just want to know what the final arrangements will be for these residents. This is the jurisdiction of your 10th Division, and the final arrangements will surely not bypass your Vice Captain Shiba. Yoshigami Tamade said in a tone that seemed to be somewhat disapproving. How else can it be arranged? After confirming that there are no hidden dangers that threaten Soul Society, they will probably be abandoned. Anyway, they are just guys who will not live long. Although Yoshigami Tamade's tone was very relaxed, Senju Makao clearly heard a hint of unwillingness in it. However, let alone a mere 19th seat of the 10th Division, even a captain-level Shinigami would find it difficult to make an effective protest against the decision of the Seireitei. What's more, the current position of the captain of the 10th Division is vacant, which has caused the 10th Division's voice to be reduced to the bottom in the 13th Division. Of course, the more important point is that the current Seireitei has no ability to treat this state of soul loss, and the value of a mere 100 or so Rukongei residents is almost insignificant in the eyes of the Central 46th Chamber. After a silence, Senju Makao answered in a rather serious tone. As the 4th Division, I will try my best to help every patient. As soon as these words came out, Yoshigami Tamade looked at Senju Makao with a little more surprise and intimacy. Immediately, while continuing his own testing work, Senju Makao also began to carry out a series of emergency treatments for some of the latest residents. However, Senju Makao knew that this was only a temporary solution, and it could only alleviate some of their pain and bring a little warmth to their numb and desperate hearts. As Senju Makao, who had been busy for most of the day, reported all the test results to Unohana Retsu frowned slightly in thought, and Senju Makao asked in a low voice. Teacher, is there no treatment for this soul-deficient disease for the time being? Unohana Retsu came back to his senses, looked at the innocent boy in front of him who seemed to be a little entangled and reluctant, and said. Yes, but it is almost impossible to achieve. Why? Senju Makao asked. Unohana Retsu pondered for a moment and said. Because it involves soul transplantation, which is to extract a part of the soul from the normal soul and transplant it to the place where the soul is missing. But let's not talk about whether there will be people willing to donate their souls for others, and even if it succeeds, it will cause the original normal soul to be permanently missing. Chapter 48. Just putting what you learned into practice. Upon hearing this, Senju Makao couldn't help but fall into deep thought, and understood Unohana Retsu's meaning from the perspective of the spirit body. Unlike the physical bodies of humans in the real world, the human body in Soul Society is essentially a spirit body composed of spirit particles attached to the soul. Spiritual power is the energy generated by the spirit particles in this spirit body, and spiritual pressure is a way to judge the density and quality of spiritual power. Therefore, in the case of the loss of souls, the spirit body will experience continuous loss of spirit particles. It is undoubtedly because the soul anchor point corresponding to this part of the spirit particles in the spirit body has been lost, which leads to the collapse of the spirit body. If you want to reverse the loss of spirit particles, you must find a way to recreate a corresponding soul anchor point to ensure that the spirit particles in the spirit body are stable. It sounds complicated, but it has some similarities with the organ transplantation of humans in the real world. Therefore, even if there is a normal soul willing to be transplanted, it will cause the normal soul to be partially missing. Although under the control of Uedao and medical skills, normal souls are unlikely to experience such a serious state of spirit particle loss. The best result is that one dead and one living soul becomes two missing souls. To put it roughly, it is like a normal person cutting off a leg and transplanting it to a person who is about to commit suicide due to depression because of the lack of legs. In the end, both of them can barely stand up with one leg. But, from the perspective of the Seireitei and the central 46th room, deliberately doing such a thing is completely redundant and meaningless, and even more worthless. Hanaretsu looked at Senju Makoto, who was lost in thought and entanglement, with a gentle look, and did not mean to interrupt Senju Makoto. Or rather, this was the main reason why Hanaretsu deliberately took Senju Makoto out this time. Some things must be experienced by yourself. When you witness some cruel and dilemmatic things, how will you choose your own path? Will the beliefs you have insisted on in the past collapse, or will they become more firm? Hanaretsu thought secretly. Makoto, didn't you mention many times that you hope to save confused lives from illness? Now the road is in front of you. Although it seems so meaningless, the teacher hopes that you can stick to it, because that can show that everything you have done in the past, even if it is concealed and exaggerated, is from the heart. And under Hanaretsu's gaze, after a while, Senju Makoto raised his head, pushed up his glasses, and said, "Teacher, I want to learn how to perform soul transplantation." Hanaretsu heard this, his eyes seemed to soften a little, and asked, "Are you sure?" "Makoto, they are just residents of Rukongei. Even if you spent a lot of time saving them, the Seireitei will not give you any rewards, and even they themselves have nothing to thank you for." Senju Makoto smiled shyly and replied, "It doesn't matter, teacher, I just put my knowledge into practice." Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Hanaretsu laughed out loud, which was rare, and said, "Makoto, I thought you would take the opportunity to say something profound again. Putting knowledge into practice, this word is really good." After a pause, Hanaretsu sighed and reminded, "However, Makoto, there is one thing you need to understand. Most of the residents in Rukongei are from the real world. Therefore, although their relatives in the real world may be sent to Rukongei later, the area they are in is completely random. Perhaps they will never have the chance to meet again in their entire lives, and the souls that can be truly produced through mating in a spirit body are very rare in Rukongei. Therefore, even if you have learned the way to transfer souls, there may not be normal souls who are willing to do this way." However, listening to Hanaretsu's serious voice, Senju Makoto's attention was unconsciously attracted by the word mating. "Gentle and intellectual Hana teacher, you uttered these two words so calmly, it's really incongruous." Senju Makoto inexplicably felt that his level was still far behind Hana teacher. Hanaretsu looked at Senju Makoto, who seemed to be in a daze, frowned, and asked, "Makoto?" "Yes, teacher." Senju Makoto quickly came back to his senses and answered seriously, "No matter what, I think it is the kindness of a doctor to keep them hopeful." Hanaretsu heard this and looked at Senju Makoto with eyes full of recognition and appreciation. This disciple is indeed as he expected at first, a little guy who is devoted to Kido and medical skills, and has a pure heart of a doctor that most of the other members of the 4th Division do not have, and hates fighting, is gentle and kind, and has unique talents in Kido and medical skills. Perhaps, Senju Makoto can indeed achieve his initial expectations, perfectly inherit his medical skills, and take over his position as the captain of the 4th Division. Hanaretsu thought silently, and did not care about the bad environment in Rukongei now, and taught Senju Makoto about the Kido with soul transplantation seriously. Senju Makoto was also extremely focused on absorbing the knowledge taught by Hanaretsu. Soon, Makoto Senju, who had a fairly good overall Uedo and medical skills, although the soul transplantation Uedo was considered one of the high-level Uedo, even Yamada-san Yoke might not have mastered it, but after spending half a day, Makoto Senju still mastered it preliminarily under the admiring eyes of Hanaretsu. Afterwards, Makoto Senju directly found Yoshiko Maitama, the 19th seat of the 10th Division, and explained that he could treat these residents of Rukongei through soul transplantation, hoping that Yoshiko Maitama would help with the screening. After all, this area of Rukongei belongs to the jurisdiction of the 10th Division, so Makoto Senju could not bypass the 10th Division in any case to perform the soul transplantation Uedo on those residents. More importantly, if it was just Makoto Senju, without the help of the 10th Division, it would take a lot of effort to just screen the suitable residents. So, as long as there is a normal spirit who is willing to undergo soul transplantation, the continuous loss of spirit particles can be prevented. Shinigami confirmed again in an excited tone. That's right, Makoto Senju nodded and said. However, there is one thing that needs to be specially stated, that is, normal spirits undergoing soul transplantation will also have a certain degree of soul loss. Although it will not affect life, the loss of soul will inevitably lead to many problems. This is inevitable, and it must be explained to those normal spirits who voluntarily undergo soul transplantation. I understand. At this moment, Shinigami's expression became completely serious and asked. Mr. Cheng, how confident are you of the success of this soul transplantation? In any case, it won't be worse, right? After a pause, Senju Makoto continued. But at least more than 90%. Shinigami nodded, and remembered Senju Makoto's identity as the disciple of Unohana Captain, and his confidence could not help but increase a point, and he said solemnly. Mr. Cheng, I promise, I will screen the residents who are missing souls as soon as possible. Chapter 49 Treatment. Afterwards, under the arrangement of Shinigami, Senju Makoto was arranged to prepare in a relatively good house, and then Shinigami hurried down to prepare. After a long time, under the guidance of Shinigami, an old lady with grey hair and an unusually shriveled spirit came in holding a little girl who was about 7 or 8 years old by the standards of real humans. Makoto, can you see if they can perform the Udeo treatment? Shinigami said in a carefree and relaxed tone, as if she was deliberately trying to ease the nervousness of the old lady behind her. After preparing in the house for a long time, Senju Makoto, who had completely entered the state, nodded and answered. Okay, leave it to me. Okay. Shinigami turned and walked out with a relaxed pace, and did not forget to help Senju Makoto close the door. Don't be nervous, Senju Makoto guided the old lady holding the little girl in front of him to sit down, with a gentle and warm tone, as if he was chatting in daily life to ease their emotions. What's your name? Sorry, it's been so long, I forgot. What's your relationship with this little girl? She's my adopted granddaughter. When I found her, she was only this tall, squatting under the eaves and crying. I don't know if it was Senju Makoto's gentleness and warmth that made the old lady open up. She almost kept talking, and her words were all about the little girl in her arms. There seemed to be a little more light in her eyes, as if the little girl had completely become all the sustenance and light of this old lady. And from the information revealed by this old lady, Senju Makoto also knew that this little girl was a soul that was buried by the god of death from the soul of the living world, and was randomly sent to this remote, barren and somewhat chaotic Cheng-ge area. Although, because the little girl has some spiritual power, she will feel hungry and need to eat occasionally, which makes the life of the two people quite difficult, but the two equally lonely souls still rely on each other tightly, until the little girl suddenly faints. Then about the possible consequences of the soul transplant on your spirit, are you clear? Senju Cheng made the final confirmation. Yes, please, Lord Death. The old lady nodded, looked down at the little girl in her arms with numb eyes and seemed to have no expression, and said, This child is all I have. If she can get better, I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life. Okay. Senju Cheng nodded solemnly, then carefully examined the pair of grandchildren, and then let them lie on a large bed together. Well, I'll start. Have a good sleep. When you wake up, your granddaughter will be able to laugh normally. Then, Makoto Senju drew out his zanpakutō and released it. Then he controlled the two grasses to wrap around their spirits and continued to repair their spirits. Only then did he really start to use the kido of soul transplantation. Outside the house, Unohana stood on the rooftop, watching through the window the process of Makoto Senju using the kido of soul transplantation. He carefully observed all the details of Makoto Senju and was ready to show up at any time to remedy the situation for Makoto Senju. However, Unohana also believed that treating in this way would only spread the damage from one soul to two souls, which was meaningless. In particular, the souls that these residents lost were mainly related to the emotional part, so even after the soul transplantation, both spirits would inevitably still have a certain degree of emotional defects. From Unohana point of view, the benefit of this painstaking task is that, in addition to allowing Senju Makoto to gain the favor of some Shinigami from Cheng-ge, it will also promote Senju Makoto's own growth. As the soul transplantation used by Senju Makoto was on the right track without any mistakes, Unohana eyes could not help but flash with admiration. Sure enough, Makoto's talent is quite outstanding. Unohana, relieved, no longer paid attention to the outside of the house, but began to think about the problem of this small-scale soul loss incident. Based on the information we know so far, it is quite suspicious and cannot be treated as a normal incident. It is necessary to remind the captain to pay attention, Unohana murmured. And Senju Cheng naturally didn't know that Unohana was watching him secretly. After successfully using the soul transplantation to return a part of the soul as the anchor point of the spirit, stabilize the little lily's spirit again, and add it to the little lily's soul to make up for some of the missing emotions, Senju Cheng, who was already sweating on his forehead, breathed a sigh of relief. Then, Senju Cheng did not stop, but did his best to complete the final repair of the little lily's spirit. Fortunately, during this period of time, Senju Cheng's study in the 4th Division gave Senju Cheng a breakthrough understanding of the structure of the spirit itself, and the little lily's spirit did not completely collapse, and only needed to be repaired with the help of the ability of Senbon Bancho. A moment later, as the green light representing the return in Senju Cheng's hand dissipated, he did not forget to do the final check for this somewhat cute little lily. Very good, there is nothing extra in the body, and the repaired spirit body will be able to develop normally in the future. Senju Cheng looked at the little girl lying in front of him, and nodded with satisfaction of the process of his first large-scale treatment. As Senju Cheng opened the door, Shinigami, who had been waiting outside for a long time, came up anxiously and asked hurriedly, "Cheng, how is the treatment?" "Sorry," Senju Cheng said politely subconsciously, and Shinigami's face turned pale and her eyes were completely red. The whole person looked shaky. Senju Cheng saw this and hurriedly finished speaking. "Sorry to keep you waiting for a long time, the treatment was very successful, and they only need to rest for a while to wake up." Shinigami's expression, which was about to collapse, froze, and she said with a smile, "Cheng, can you please stop breathing heavily when you speak? It's obviously you who was too impatient." Senju Cheng said with an innocent look, not looking like he was taking the opportunity to retaliate. After a pause, Senju Cheng looked at Shinigami's reaction and asked curiously, "Do you have any relationship with them?" Shinigami heard this, her eyes revealed a trace of reminiscence, and she said nostalgically, "That was a story more than 10 years ago. If it weren't for her kindness, I'm afraid I wouldn't." But before Shinigami could finish, Senju Cheng interrupted without hesitation. "Stop, stop, stop, call the next resident who can be treated with soul transplantation." Chapter 50 The value of each Imara silver. Suddenly, the interrupted Shinigami's expression became a little strange, as if a peacock that was slowly spreading its tail was suddenly hit by a 1,000-year killing blow, and everything was forced to shrink back in an instant. "Cheng-ge, don't you need to take a break? I just want to tell you my story." Shinigami smacked her lips and said with excitement, "Really? No need, because I already know it." Senju Cheng asked. Shinigami was stunned and asked, "Cheng-ge, have you heard my story?" "No," Senju Cheng smiled gently and replied. "But your face is full of stories, so I like to read it slowly myself, rather than listening to you say it." Shinigami only felt a burst of electricity rushing from the top of his head to his heart, and his whole body couldn't help but tremble. That shock is meeting a confidant. This is also that first man who is willing to take the initiative to deeply understand her inner self since Shinigami became the god of death. Who said, there can't be pure friendship and pure confidence between the same sex? Cheng-ge, thank you. Shinigami said with tears in the corners of her eyes. Thank me? Why should I thank you? Senju looked at Shinigami with a confused look on his face, feeling that he could not understand the man in front of him. However, Senju always felt that the atmosphere seemed to be developing in a strange direction, and he said quickly, "Next, thank you." "Okay, I'll arrange it right away." Shinigami wiped her tears and quickly made arrangements. After the success of the first case, the next resident who had relatives who were willing to provide soul transplant arrived quickly. Senju, who had a short rest, also went to the state again and treated the residents without stopping. For a while, as the news about Senju spread thoroughly, among the residents who were missing souls, it was like a little vitality slowly dissipated in the sad and dead autumn, giving those residents who were almost numb a glimmer of hope in their eyes. As the 19th seed, Shinigami also organized his subordinates to run among the residents, one by one to confirm whether there were relatives or friends who were willing to provide soul transplant. But just as Unohana said, this is an act of little significance. Very few residents in Cheng-ge have the opportunity to reunite with their relatives in their lifetime, and apart from their relatives, there are very few friends in Cheng-ge who are truly willing to sacrifice their souls for each other. Even though Yoshiko ran back and forth to confirm, in the end there were less than 5 fingers, and the proportion was even less than 5%. Damn, as his subordinates reported the results one by one, Yoshiko couldn't help but reveal a bit of dejection on his face. This is a rare encounter with such an idiot in the GOTY 13, and in the end there are less than 5 people who have the opportunity to survive. For Yoshiko, it is undoubtedly difficult to accept. Right. Suddenly, Yoshiko remembered something and turned to the subordinates beside him. You continue to ask if there are any missed residents, and strictly confirm whether they are willing. Then, Yoshiko hurried in one direction, heading straight for a sparsely populated area. Soon, a house standing alone on the hillside came into Yoshiko sight. There were holes in the house made of wooden boards to barely block the wind and rain. Seeing this, Yoshiko did not hesitate at all and directly pushed open the door that was more decorative than practical. The moment his eyes darkened, a short knife was directly pressed against Yoshiko neck. Don't move. Yoshiko was slightly startled and slowly moved his eyes upwards. Only then did he find that Ichimura-jin was actually clinging to the eaves above, like a vicious venomous snake, with the fangs in his hand pointed at his neck. Yoshiko raised his hands and moved away from the zanpakutō on his waist, indicating that he had no hostility, and said, "Little boy, you should have an impression of me. I have deliberately placed dry food in a place where you can easily get it several times." Slowly, Ichimura-jin moved the short blade that was pressed against Yoshiko, and his light body fell from the eaves. His cold tone seemed to be intentionally softened, and he said, "I remember you, Yoshiko. What's the matter with you?" "TSK, just like what Makoto-kun said, what a rude brat," Yoshiko said while looking around. In response, Ichimura-jin remained silent and did not say anything. However, when Yoshiko-ma's eyes fell on Ichimura-jin again, he suddenly noticed the short blade in Ichimura-jin's hand, his eyes suddenly shrank, and he exclaimed, "Zanpakutō? Brat, where did you get it from?" Ichimura-jin heard this, looked down at the zanpakutō in his hand, and replied, "The name of this thing, is it called zanpakutō? I originally picked up a weapon of the god of death for self-defense and kept it with me, and then I woke up and it turned into this." Yoshiko. God, genius. How old does this brat's spirit look, but he has already awakened his first release on his own? This is undoubtedly a genius that Soul Society rarely sees in 100 years, no, this is perhaps a rare genius in hundreds of years. Almost subconsciously, Yoshiko spoke. "Kid, do you want to become a Shinigami? With your qualifications and talents, you will definitely become one of the most powerful Shinigami in Soul Society, and it is not impossible for you to become a captain in the future." Shinigami. Ichimura-jin's eyes flickered, as if he was chewing something, and then asked, "My value is great. Great, I'm undoubtedly a genius." Yoshiko said affirmatively. Then, in Yoshiko-ma's shocked eyes, Ichimura-jin slowly knelt down on both knees towards Yoshiko, and said in a begging manner, "I hope to exchange my value for your help." Yoshiko saw this and said seriously, "You said, even if I can't do it, I will try my best to ask my vice captain for help." Ichimura-jin suddenly raised his head, stared at Yoshiko, and said, "No, please try not to alarm more Shinigami, I just hope you can use your relationship to find a trustworthy Shinigami to treat a friend of mine." Treatment? Yoshiko was stunned. "That's right," Ichimura-jin said as he stood up and lifted up a tatami mat beside him. Inside was a fainted little lily with orange hair. Ha ha ha, Yoshiko couldn't help laughing when she saw this, and felt that it was all surprisingly coincidental. However, what Yoshiko didn't notice was that the short blade in Ichimura-jin's hand was pointed at Yoshiko-ma's throat. Ichimura-jin's narrowed eyes exuded a cold light, and he was ready to shoot the death god in front of him immediately if Yoshiko said something like, "So it was you, a little brat, who stole this little lily." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.